Cheers, successful 2023.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'll talk about whatever. My life's all kinds of crazy.
Hit the bell!
Because you have an Android.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is.
Just subscribe already.
Anything in particular you guys really want to talk about on here? I mean, obviously, I want to talk about your past.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay,
I'm very open. Yeah.
That's like whenever, because in my eyes, a lot of reasons I do my podcast is to try to tell everybody's story and like to show people that, hey, you're not the only one out there that is doing this or going through this. You guys, YouTube's telling me that 75% of you guys are not subscribed. That's absolutely insane because I upload almost every single day. So make sure you guys hit the subscribe with the bell so you guys never miss a video in your instance. And so like I love to hear people's story because I think it could be inspirational for a lot of people.
For sure. Yeah, and I'm super open about it. So
cool. And I also want to say, for anyone that's listening to the podcast, what we might talk about today, I'm not no expert on it, right? So I hope people understand that, and I'm just trying to do my best to bring Bo out and Lynn out, and we just chat and maybe just
get good conversation going.
Yeah, make some good content out of it.
Absolutely.
So I want to talk about Lynn reached out to me. Well, Bo reached out to Lynn, and then Lynn reached out to me. And Bo wanted to come on the podcast and kind of share her story. So Lynn's been on before. He's an officer here locally to where we had the podcast. And then Bo, you guys have known each other through work. Mm-hmm. You guys had kind of like met each other through work and became friends. So that's kind of how this whole podcast came about.
Yeah.
And Bo, you from what I understand, we literally just met, but you are a child abuse warrior, right? Survivor?
Yeah.
What would you consider it?
I say
What term do you like?
I say for me warrior because I'm super corny like that, but because I am super vocal about it. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's like 3 classifications, and not to offend anybody who is in this world and currently living it or has lived it in the past. But the way that I personally view it, and there's a lot of different ways that people view it, victim is when they're actively going through it, and they're in the throes of hurt from it. And then you move on to survivor, where you have taken a stand and you've spoken out about it. And then there's warrior, when you're like, this isn't going to happen. Like, I'm going to say something and do something to make it better.
So you're like a warrior is someone that fights back.
Yeah.
Has gone through it and now is fighting back. Can you be a warrior without ever going through it?
Sure.
Like, do you have people that, because you said something about where you work. Where do you call the place?
I work for the Children's Advocacy Center.
And that's like you're literally helping kids that are going through it every single day.
Yeah.
And so you went through child abuse for how long in your life? Like, how old are you now, and how long of your life did you have to deal with it?
I'm 34.
Okay.
And the grooming started around 3, and the actual abuse was 5 to 15.
So grooming, what do you mean by that?
That's kind of where the perpetrators like assert dominance. They feel out what they can get away with and what they can't.
They test their boundaries.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See, they kind of get an idea of, okay, I was able to do this, and they went along with it, or they didn't say anything. What else can I do? And they just start pushing that envelope further and further until they do what they want.
So these people that were abusive, were they parents? Were they, and anything you want to talk about, you tell me, like, hey.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine.
Like, I'm not comfortable with this. Were they parents, like, were they parents, or were they guardians, or
It was my stepdad.
It was your stepdad? Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. So interesting. And when we're talking, like, we're just talking, like, abuse of any kind, right? Like,
for me specifically, there was, like, I call it sexual abuse with sprinklings of physical in there. The physical abuse isn't very prominent in my mind because it wasn't a consistent thing, but the vast majority of what I dealt with was solely sexual abuse.
Wow. And at 3 years old, your stepdad was starting to groom this to see what he could get away with.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any, like, because it's your stepdad, but your mom was in the picture too. Do you still talk to them?
No, I have no contact with my mom. She took his side. And she still goes and sees him.
I would say, because even at like 3, 5, even at a very young age, you probably had to know at least, right? Like that it wasn't right,
Yeah.
right? Like even though you like basically are growing up with this abuse, like you just naturally know. It's an instinct to know, like, I don't deserve to be treated like this or be going through this.
Yeah, I knew, but he was such a scary individual. At 3, I was super small, and he was a 6'3", 250. So, I mean,
Total
just
scumbag.
towered over top of me. Very aggressive in his, like, demeanor towards me whenever people weren't around. So he was very good at asserting that dominance and that fear. Like his way of grooming was very, very fear-based versus other ways that people will groom, which is like secretive, loving, those types of things. His was just like, if you tell anybody what I do, I'm going to kill your mom, your sister, and you.
That's insane.
Well, and think about, too, when it all came out for Bo, one of the people in your life that you think should be in your corner no matter what, your mom or your dad.
Yeah.
And her mom takes a side. Think about what that would do to an adult, let alone a child mentally.
Yeah.
So kudos to you, Bo, for being able to truck through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that had to be extremely hard. Like, how old were you when you like approached your mom and was like, "Hey, this is going on"?
So initially, I was 7. So my sister is 5 years younger than me. And I was 7 years old, and I remember my sister got in trouble for something. I don't remember what that particular thing was, but I remember my dad dragging her into a room, and I hear a belt hitting her. And he hit her on the face with a belt, a leather belt.
And she's 2?
And she's 2. And we went to the daycare. It was either the next day or the day after. And the daycare, like, asked me. She was like, what happened? Because my sister had marks. And I said, Dad hit her in the face with a belt because of XYZ. So she called CD, or Children's Division, and they met me at school, and they said, can you tell me about this? And I told them about the issue with the belt, and they said, is there anything else? And I told them what my dad was doing, and
you knew it was wrong before. You just didn't know who to talk to.
Right.
Okay, because you're just such a young kid.
Yeah.
I mean, a kindergartner should go to school having, like, a kindergarten's biggest worry should be, like, learning their alphabet, or, like, what time recess is.
Exactly.
Like, not having to try to figure out, like, is this situation a bad situation? Who do I talk to? I mean, that is a very, very, like, mature thing to have to go through at an incredibly young age. Like, kids are still pooping their pants in kindergarten. Like, they really are. Like, they're still children. Like, it's borderline if they should even be in school yet.
Right.
Right? Like, they're not thinking on their own yet, but, like, you're now in a position where you have to. So that's pretty insane. But 7th grade, or at 7, that's not till like 1st grade, right?
Yeah, I was in, I think, 2nd grade at the time.
2nd grade.
And, they launched an investigation, removed my stepdad from the home, told my mom. And I remember my mom having me make him cards, talking about how I missed him and all these other, like, I love you cards, and she got me to tell them that I was lying. And I did. I said I was mad, and they dropped the entire investigation. But I had, looking back on it now, working in this field, granted that was in the 90s, so things are very different than what they were back then. But I could never see a children's division worker, and a police officer was there also, having a 7-year-old tell you in, like, anatomical terms, like, what is being done to them, and then the kid saying, I was lying, I was mad, and them being like, okay, bye, we'll check out later.
Well, not only that, but your sister also got beat with a belt at 2 years old.
In which case, they
right? That's like evidence right there. Like whoever that daycare worker was should have been like, dude, no, this freaking 2-year-old is getting hit with a belt. Yep. A light smack will teach or not even that, just a finger, and telling them, no, I don't have kids, but I know, like, I didn't get hit like that, and I turned out all right, I think.
I have a 3-year-old, and she tests every limit that I have.
Sure.
But I could not imagine striking her with an object.
Yeah.
A little swat on the butt and sent to the corner is one thing, but or stern talking.
Especially in the face, too. I couldn't do that to a full-grown adult.
I realized as a parent, like,
even my own dog, I can't do that.
Right. I've learned as a parent, like, a lot of your facial expressions and your body language will do more than swatting them on the butt or sending them to the corner.
Yeah.
That does more for them emotionally than anything.
Yeah, like a good intimidating stare.
I can swat my daughter on a butt and she'll just look at me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, that didn't work.
I remember my mom, she had some pretty mean looks, man. It straightened me up pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know, you're in a restaurant or going shopping, and she gives you that look, and you're like, oh, I'm in trouble.
I haven't
That's all it
developed
took.
that look yet for my kid. She's just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to learn how to be a parent, don't go to Walmart and people watch, because that's not the place.
No, no.
That's how not to be a parent.
But just to kind of backtrack a little bit, so Children's Division was very involved in my family. So this all occurred before I was 7 in Sullivan. And they were very involved. They got multiple hotline calls.
Years? Mm-hmm. Years before, like when you're like 5.
Yeah, from the time I was 3 to the time I was 7 and disclosed. They had, I think, I pulled my records, and I think it was 3 or 4 hotline calls. And at each one, they like recommended some sort of like parenting class, anger management. Like he said that when I was 3, he locked me in a closet because I was purposefully tying my shoes wrong. And I was doing it on purpose to get at him.
This dude, honestly, just sounds like a real scumbag.
Yeah.
Like, just like a psychopathic scumbag. Mm-hmm. Like something that you would, like, I've never had to deal with anything like this. This is something like I would imagine seeing in a TV show where they're trying to, or a movie where they're trying to paint a picture of a dude to make him look like a very bad person. And it's crazy to think that somebody in real life would actually do it.
Oh, yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't understand. This stuff happens every day to kids. Mm-hmm. Every day.
We see 200 kids a year, and that's just the ones that we can get in.
Right. That's
just closing.
That's just our local area.
So why had a crazy, like, why after all these calls, why did, like, nothing got brought up? Like, why did it get just brushed off, you think?
So there's a lot of misconceptions that have changed over the years. Recantation. There's many different stages of disclosure. Recantation used to not be one of them, which is what I went through at 7.
Which is what? Can you explain that to me and the listeners?
Recantation is when a child makes a disclosure, and then all of a sudden, for various different reasons, they're like, I was kidding. Like, they didn't expect it to go that far. They don't want the person to get in trouble. Pressure from somebody to, change their story. Or just like maybe they just aren't ready and they can't deal with it at that time. So they're like, I'm going to revert back to what I know because I can handle what I know. I've done that. This is new and I can't handle this.
Are you talking the kid?
Mm-hmm.
The kid's like, it's like all, because there's, like, what happens? Yeah, I could see that because now everything's changing at home too.
Well, and think about, a lot of times when children disclose, the perpetrator is usually somebody that is close to them, that knows them.
Yeah.
And that child still, even though that person, victimized them, they still may care about that person, the perpetrator.
It's 92% of perpetrators is somebody the kid likes, knows, and loves. And despite everything, I never want to see my stepdad again or be around him, but I do still have love for him because it wasn't always bad, is the other part of that, is it's not always about abuse. Like, there's good things in the relationship as well.
Sure. That's pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I feel like that's just, was that developmental or is that something that's just, you felt like it's just always been there? Like, like there had to be some point of like hatred for him, right? Did you ever go through that stage?
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I can get in trouble for what I'm about to say. I hope at least. There was at one point in time.
If you think it is something, we can just cut it out later on.
There was one point in time when I was 15. I was washing dishes, passed out drunk. He was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic, and I was just sitting there washing dishes, and I'm like, man, I have this freaking butcher knife in my hand. I could easily walk over there and just end it.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
No.
I'm gonna make a call after this. No.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Why would you not have those thoughts?
Right. I mean, I would probably be thinking the same thing.
There was
in multiple instances, like all the time, be pissed off.
Yeah, and there's different.
I've had people do less to me, where I've done some pretty bad stuff. Where I was just mad, I was just like, I'm someone just doing something that they, just shouldn't have done to me, and I got mad, and I'm like, man, I freaking beat the hell out of that dude, and like.
And there's also like.
Yeah, totally different. I've never been.
There's ebbs and flows.
Abused that long.
So like I might have hated him one day, and the next day I felt bad for him for whatever reason. Or, you know, the next day after that, I might be like, you know, I'm just going to end my own life and just remove this for me. And if it wasn't for my sister, that probably would have been a very real scenario.
Like, how old when you start thinking those kind of thoughts?
12.
12?
11 or 12, you know, somewhere around there.
And, like, now, is that like depression? Are you starting to go do, like, depressive stuff?
Yeah, because you
like
just
depression type.
you get to a point to where you don't think it's ever going to end. And the average of the abuse that I handled was once a week, every week for 10 years.
Whoa.
At least. It never missed. Sometimes it was more than that.
Yep.
You know, but so whenever the significant abuse started, like the sodomy, I was 5 and my mom was actually pregnant with my sister. And I found out that she was a girl, and like I just knew. I didn't have like education on this, but I just kind of knew. Like, she's a girl, I'm a girl, this is what's going to happen.
Right, you start thinking this might be the norm, you know, especially at that age, you know. A lot of kids may go through something like that and think, well, this must be normal. You know, they're showing their love for me, you know.
Yeah.
Type deal. So that's very difficult for an adult to wrap their mind around it sometimes, or even investigators or part of the disciplinary.
That a
team.
child might think that that's just
Right.
how life is. Like, that's just how you get treated when you do something wrong.
Yeah. And
Sure.
so when my mom had her, she went to the NICU and spent some time in there with some health problems. And I looked in her little bassinet that she was in, and I grabbed her little hand, and I was like, I promise, I'm never going to let you go through this. And that's
At
the whole
5 years old?
That's the whole reason for everything, is her right there.
Whoa.
And so I don't know. I'm a religious person, so I feel like a lot of what I have been able to overcome has been because of my faith in God. That was just like a self-instilled thing. Like, I was never taught it. It was
Yeah,
just
that's what I was
there.
going to ask. Like, it doesn't sound like he's taking you to church.
He did not believe in God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's evident.
Yeah.
Right. And hey, you know what? Like, there's good people that don't believe in God, and that's okay. But, you know, the fact that you found it is a pretty magical thing. And especially, you know, like, I think in a situation like yours, you kind of need to turn, you need something,
Something to
right?
believe in.
Some type of faith
Exactly.
to keep you going through it all. Now, like, every time, like you said, it was a weekly thing. Was he drinking every time? Was it like, did he have to be drunk?
No, typically
I'm not trying to give the dude excuses.
No, you're fine.
I'm just kind of curious. Like,
I've actually never been asked that, and I've told my story a lot. So that's a really good question.
I'm just wondering, like, what stems this psychopathic behavior?
You know, but no, he was almost never drunk. For the most part, the abuse would occur in like the early morning hours between like 3 and 5 when my mom would go to work, and he would wake me up, and it would happen then.
What? So what did your mom like work?
She worked a factory job.
Okay, so she just like 3 a.m. She's going in super early,
Yeah.
and he just wakes up and he's pissed off.
He's not even mad. So the other thing that's really going to blow your mind with all this is years later, he would talk about it and his reasoning for doing it. And his reasoning for doing it was he loved me. He wanted to be with me on a level of husband and wife. Even going so far as saying, I married your mom so that way I could be with you. And one day you and I will be together. And one day you will like all of this and want all of this and ask for all of this.
Insane. And you said like he sexually abused you too,
Oh, yeah.
right? At what age did that start?
So there was sodomy,
Which is what exactly?
anal penetration.
Okay.
At 5. He attempted vaginal penetration at 11, couldn't do it, but finally did it at 12. So for a year, he was attempting quite regularly to do that. But throughout the entire time, there was oral as well, that he would both make me perform, and then he would force me to allow him to perform.
That is disgusting. That is insane.
Yeah.
And so it's so mind-blowing that someone could do that and get away with it, and then your mom is on his side, and your mom, no offense, she's got to be just as crazy as he is, right?
I have more anger towards her.
As you should.
Right. Well, I don't
know,
know.
that's tough, isn't it?
That's extremely tough because all she did was support it, right? His.
She just ignored it.
Yeah, which is supporting it.
And then she sat through a jury trial, listened in detail to everything, and then still stays with him. She goes and visits him.
I don't know how this scumbag even sleeps at night. Like, I don't know how you can do
Sleeps in a very small cell, I'm sure.
Oh, okay. So it did.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But we'll
Cool.
get to that.
Yeah,
Well, you know what? I like to, whenever I'm watching a TV show and I know like my favorite character is going to die, or I know it's not going to end the way I want it to, I don't want to like continue it. But then whenever I find out like if it's like the situation's getting bad, I'm like, I don't want this guy to die. I will quit watching it.
I do the same thing.
Because I'm like, I don't want the story to end on a bad note. So like, and like whenever I hear like a leak of like the guy living, I'm like, oh, okay, I can keep watching it.
Oh, no, there's a happy ending.
Okay, cool. Cool. So, yeah, so like how did all through all the years someone never came in, right? Like through all the trials and tribulations and everything else that went on, how did nobody ever, how did your mom's never seen it? Like your mom never walked in on it, right?
No, because at the beginning of all of it, like whenever he would first wake me up, he would have me lock the deadbolt because my mom didn't have a deadbolt key. So even if she did come back home, she would have to bang to get in. So we would know.
But still,
Why she never got a deadbolt key, I have no idea.
yeah. Or like all the red flags of like all the multiple calls, the people coming in, the deadbolt key, you saying things, the physical abuse, like on she could probably see markings. Like
She would see like things that he would do that as a mom, I'd be like, bro, what are you doing? Like he would grope at times, my boobs or my butt. He would make comments. He would tell me
like that alone, right? Even a girl at 18 years old, for a full-grown adult like that. Well, I'm assuming he's probably 40.
at the time,
Yeah.
probably. Well, today he turned 60, so.
Well, screw you. No, he don't deserve
Happy birthday
it.
in
No happy birthday.
Asshole.
I hope it's a terrible birthday. Yeah, I hope you got freaking raped in prison today. Like, I hope it was the worst day of your life. Like, I don't think this dude deserves to have a happy birthday, right? Like, I think he's gonna have to pay for this for now and in his next life, right? Like, this is something that you don't.
I mean, when you talk about heinous crimes, for me, I put, child predators above all. That's just how I personally feel.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Agree. It's terrible to take someone's life, if you're just going to, for no reason, just take somebody's life. That's terrible. But for me, it's still a second for me. I still put child predators above that because, if you murder, like let's say you get in a bar fight and you end up murdering somebody because you get mad or you're losing your fight with another adult. It's an adult, they can at least fend for themselves to some degree.
I totally agree.
Children can't.
I totally agree.
So it takes a real piece of work to be able to, be a predator towards a child.
And not only, I'm not saying it's right to do it one time, but to do it to somebody their entire life.
You said 5 to 15, like 10 years.
A very sickening thought that someone could or would do this. Mm-hmm. Like that's insane.
And it's so common.
And you're thinking in your case,
so weird.
You said at least average one time a week for 10 years, 520 on average. That happened to you.
And it's usually within those instances multiple charges too.
Exactly.
If you want to break it down.
Yeah. So like each individual encounter is potentially is a separate charge.
Yeah.
So 520 separate offenses.
Right.
So now we all know that you got to prove each particular incident. Just because a kid says, "Hey, this happened to me," X amount of times, you got to break down each one of those and try to build.
I mean, how many times you got to prove before you just keep this scumbag in jail?
Well, you just got to get the one at least to get that charge. That one charge. Got to prove that one, but it's good to build the strongest case you can.
Yeah. Right. But after after 2 times. I'm not saying even 1 time's okay. I'm not trying to say that at all. If you do it 2 times for sure, locked up forever, right?
You would think.
Like, locked up forever. I'm not even saying one time is okay. I don't know. But I'm saying 2 times, like, screw this person. Just lock this freaking scumbag up forever. They shouldn't be in society or even part of this world. Like, they honestly they're the ones that probably deserve to get the chair probably more than the murderers do. Like, I do believe in an eye for an eye, but yeah, that might as well just...
But let me ask you this, because I'm curious
equal.
myself. You say you see about 200 kids a year. How many of those do you see convictions for? Just to give perspective on how many cases we're investigating, but aren't necessarily able to make every single case.
Yeah,
So
and we can look it up, too.
I've been doing this for 6 years now. So you think 200 kids every year for my 4 counties. I've seen 30, maybe, convictions.
30 total convictions in your 6 years?
Now, if you factor in plea deals,
Oh, right.
it's a
Do you
little
count
bit-
those?
I do not.
You don't count the plea
I do
deal?
not, because
They're still technically conviction. Just not on the original charge.
not when they're like SIS, SES.
yeah.
These are
These are terms you're like,
Yeah,
what are
I'm
you
like-
guys talking about? We can have our
Sure.
own conversation over here and you'd be clueless. We should try it. No.
So SIS and SES is like suspended sentencing. So it means that they don't immediately go to jail unless they do something to get in trouble. And I don't.
Basically, I put on probation.
But they were proven that they did something.
They admitted.
They
to doing it.
they worked out a deal with their attorney and the prosecutor for a lesser offense or a different offense that may not sound as bad, and they're going to get essentially time served in jail if they spend any time in jail, and probation for normally it's like 5 years, sometimes 10. And if they walk the line, if it's in SIS, then it's wiped away.
What SIS is what again?
Suspended imposition of sentence. So meaning
That's so crazy that someone could get that.
Yeah.
After
So-
admitting that they
so
did what they did.
That's part of the plea deal is they have to admit and plead guilty to whatever offense that they've worked out between attorneys. So it may be
But how can that ever, like, I mean, I would say, like, maybe 1% of the time, it probably works out well. But the other percent of the time, like, they could go out and just have resentment. And so now they go do it again. They do it with somebody else.
most of them do
abuse.
reoffend, yeah.
But sometimes it's also a prosecutor will do that because it's what's best for that kid.
Right.
Some kids are not able to take the stand in front of a bunch of people and talk, and they just can't. And when they can't, sometimes deals have to be made to do something.
Or let's say, from the investigative side of things, if we know, hey, we believe that this took place, this is what evidence we do have, and the prosecutor feels like, hey, if we take this to trial, we may lose, but we know we can get him to take a plea deal and plead guilty on this charge, we might as well stick him with what we can versus taking that risk. And a lot of
Right.
a lot of
I guess
prosecutors,
I see it now.
most prosecutors will
like
sit
that.
down with the victim's family and say, this is where we're at. This is our case. This is what we have. We're taking it's a 50-50 shot if we're going to a jury trial or trial at all. Or we may be able to work out this deal where he pleads guilty to this charge. And then we know we got him on this as a guarantee. So it's kind of a back and forth thing. Usually, depending on the prosecutor, most of them will go with the wishes of the family and the victim.
I think if I'm remembering the statistics correct, and don't quote me, but I think
Look it up.
I think it's 7% of all sex crimes for children get sentenced or prosecuted. Like they go through.
Could you look that up? That's a good one. 7%?
I think it's 7%.
Well, when you were saying 30 out of the 200 get prosecuted.
that's
30
30 out of the 6 years I've been doing this.
30 out of 6 years. And 200 kids a year that her office sees.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So-
it's partly because COVID had hit and that had drastically slowed down the court processes right now, and they're still so bottlenecked. But these cases take forever.
And I feel like those should go straight to the front of the line, though.
Yeah.
Right?
They
Those
do,
should
but
go.
think
Those should
about
go.
I can tell you, and from my shoes, I'm one detective for this county, which, it's not uncommon for a small county. But, there's times you'll go through, or I'll see a month or two without getting a single child sex case. But then I may have a month where I get 6 in 1 month.
Yeah. So
And so you have to work
insane.
with 6 different victims and 6 different families and do potentially 6 different forensic interviews, and then you got to go through interviewing other people involved or trying to corroborate evidence and build the case. There's some of these cases that take months for me to investigate, or at least get to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to present this to the prosecutor and see what she decides.
Okay, this is a good question too. What percent, this would be a good Google, what percent of cases that get brought up are actually, like, how many of them are just like some kid actually being mad?
You are asking the right person. This is my soapbox.
Yeah, this is her
Is it
big
like
deal.
0.01?
Really quick, she had it on a different page. It's 1 in 5 get, it's up at the top there. So reported less than 1 in 5 go to prosecution, and half of those result in a conviction or guilty plea. So.
Wait, okay, so this is on what website? Office of Justice Programs.gov. It says, our research finds that a small proportion of the reported cases, less than 1 in 5, went to prosecution. About half of those cases resulted in a conviction or guilty plea.
So half a case in 5, roughly, I guess is what that's saying.
Whoa.
Very small amount.
Very small amount.
When you're talking about,
And this is
That's a good site.
in the United States?
Yeah.
This is just United
anything with
States.
.gov is usually
Yeah.
pretty reliable.
Yeah, right.
But to answer your question
Okay.
about fabrication and angry, the statistics are officially 4 to 8% of kids, 4 to 8% of why can I not think of the word?
Give me some here, I'll help you.
You know, when they make the allegation, report it.
Report it.
So, okay, there's approximately 360 reported allegations of abuse a year worldwide. Of those, 4 to 8% are fabricated. When you look into the age frames, when you get to like 3 to 8, 3 to 10, that's about a 2% chance. And most of the time when you're dealing with kids that young, it's because mom's mad at dad because they're going through a nasty divorce and they're coaching. When you get to the higher ups, that's when you see a lot of like, my boyfriend broke up with me and he cheated on me, you know.
And they're trying to get back at him.
So it is, when you think about 360,000, that is an extremely rare number.
When you say like the boyfriend and girlfriend break up and then they're trying to do it like,
So like if you have a high school relationship and, you know, the boyfriend cheats on her or whatever and she gets mad, there are very few instances, but they do happen, where the victim would then make a disclosure that the boyfriend raped her or did something of that nature just to get back at him.
okay.
But again, those are very few and far between. So
Right, and I mean I've seen that before.
and it's more prevalent now than I think it ever has been.
Yeah.
Social media is a huge monster for us in trying to work these cases. It helps us a lot, but
Well, the other hindrance was whenever, back in 2020, when we started to gain momentum with the movement of child sexual abuse and all of that. Then
Is that considered the same thing though? If they're the same age?
it's still a sexual offense.
It's still
Okay.
a sexual
So
offense
in
involving
your-
a child.
So okay, I see. So that's still something that you work in your division.
Yeah, it would just be
It
handled.
would be handled as essentially a rape case instead of a statutory rape. Statutory means, you know, an adult versus offends against a child.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and when it's a kid, under 18 perpetrator, it goes through the juvenile system instead of the adult system.
So like if
Sure.
a 16-year-old, you know, rapes another 16-year-old, it would then be referred to the juvenile office.
Sure.
So
Sure. That makes sense.
Versus the regular prosecutor.
That makes sense. I guess I just didn't realize like fully to the extent of what cases you work, but that makes sense then.
So at my office, we work, we deal with individuals 3 to 17. We do deal with some that are older if their intellectual disabilities put them between the age of 3 to 17. And we deal with primarily sexual abuse because that's just what is prevalent. But we do see physical, we see neglect, we see drug endangerment, witness to homicide, and other witnesses to crime. So we'll see a wide range of things. But
Oh, I'm sure you see all kinds of stuff.
I would say 95% is easily sexual abuse.
Whoa.
Definitely.
That's insane.
And when we do get, in my opinion, when we do get the physical cases, you know, the physical abuse cases, they're usually pretty severe. You know, when we see those. Now, you'll get a kid that's mad at mom and dad and because they got spanked because they weren't listening or they just were acting out, try to disclose and say, well, they did this to me, or they hit me hard, or they hit me across the face. You know, that's not uncommon, but a lot of those, you know, could be, in my opinion, brought up to just parenting. You know, like,
Sure.
hey, this is my way of parenting. I didn't really physically hurt them, but they're gonna respect me as a parent. You know,
Sure.
Otherwise you're gonna be dealing with a different monster when they get a little older. So,
Sure. Yeah, but still, I mean, they probably still have to go do some type of counseling after they get called in like that.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, most of the time, or at least they're provided that avenue to go to counseling.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's still like now, it probably just has to be checked. Is that how it is now? Anytime there's a call, it's not getting passed through just like yours did. Like when you were younger?
Well,
I would like to say most of the time.
I don't know that yours necessarily get passed through, or it just.
At a young age.
So
I'm talking
the
at a
one-
young age.
The one that he's talking about when I was 7.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So a couple different things I want to say about that. So Children's Division dropped it immediately when I said, I was lying, I was mad, you know, a 7-year-old. So anyway.
Like there was no like, hey, okay, even though she said she was just mad, we should still probably look into things. We should probably have you go to some type of counseling. Is that what they do? Like on like a maybe just like a one where a kid calls it abuse. Is it like mandatory counseling?
They can't, they don't mandate counseling. They can ask them, they can urge, like Children's Division can urge a family, like, hey, it's really important that you do this. If there's a safety plan, they can try to put it in there that they do counseling. But
Is it
ultimately,
not just like a big red flag if they're like, nah, we're just going to move on with our lives?
it's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon. It happens more than you would think. But for me, if we are working an investigation in, like you said, the 3 to 8 range, 3 to 9 range, if a kid recants, I'm really worried about that because, like you said, the stat on that was what?
Like 2%.
2% of those kids.
Sure.
You know, so for me, it's like, okay, there's probably something else going on here. Because most of those kids, think about it, most 3 to 8-year-olds, if they tell you something serious, they're not going to lie about it. What is their reasoning for lying?
Yeah, they don't even really know how to lie yet.
They just know, hey, this happened, so I'm just going to tell you. A lot of them are brutally honest.
Yeah.
But you start getting into, you know, your teens or your preteens, then they'll start, you know, sometimes they'll start making stuff up to just so that they don't get in trouble with you as a parent
Sure.
or whatever the case may be. But
Well, I'd say if you got 2 parents and you made it all the way up till 16 years old, and then a kid calls in for child abuse, I'm not saying that there's no way in hell, but if the parents have never had like any encounters with the police where they're getting called in, they have never had anything in the past, and all of a sudden now this, I could kind of see being like, okay, you know, not wanting to do anything. But at 7, at 7 years old, it's kind of like, and there's been prior things. It's like, okay, I think you guys should at least
something going on here.
at least come to us, have us work through some things, because it seems like there's some stuff going on. It seems like it's going to happen again. And let's just see if maybe there's something we could help you guys out with.
This was also in 96. So
Yeah.
things changed since then, but
Big time.
they did drop it. Law enforcement actually never made a report on it. I tried to look it up later.
That's a no-go.
And there was not a report made on it.
Mm-hmm.
And with Children's Division, when you're an adult, you can request your records to see all the hotlines and such. The reason why I requested them was I wanted to view that specific hotline because it was unsubstantiated, meaning unfounded. After 7 years, it falls off. So I can't view that. So that's just kind of lost in the abyss of Children's Division.
Whoa.
So I have no way to go back and track.
But let me ask you this.
And see like how many reports there really were or anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
I'm curious. So you had multiple different hotlines from your childhood. Did he get scared by any of those? Or did he like...
That's a great question too.
No. So the first initial one was because I was like 3 or 4. I loved cherry pie when I was a toddler, and I really wanted it. And he made me eat the whole entire damn thing, and to the point that I threw up. And then that was at the same time that he locked me in the closet. He used to lock me in a closet because I wouldn't eat certain foods. I don't like tomatoes and green peppers and stuff. So after I puked, he got mad, put me in the closet, and then other times, I wouldn't eat certain foods. So he'd put me in this dark closet, which is why I'm still afraid of the dark to this day. But anytime I would start to open it, he would then beat on the door. And so I would shut it again. And I don't know exactly how long I was in there because, I was 3 and 4. It felt like hours.
Sure.
still longer than needed to be. And so after those hotline calls, he would just amp it up a little bit for a while. After
Like he's mad.
yeah,
And he's gonna like
He would
show
put the
you.
pressure on you, and he was trying to dominate you, basically.
yeah, he would bare butt spank me with a leather belt and make me count to 100. 100 hits, just constant. And if I cried for my mom or if I yelled out or anything, start it all over again at one.
Damn.
So he would just ramp it up. And then eventually, throughout the progression of the abuse, anytime I got in trouble, my way out of it was to perform. So then he switched it over to that.
That's insane.
There's a special place in hell for people like him.
There really is. There really is. And I've said he's called him a psychopath. I don't know how many times now, but like that's like the only way I can think of describing someone like this. Like I think you have to literally have like mental issues to even be able to go to sleep at night.
No conscience at all.
None.
There was many times where he would say, "This ain't gonna happen anymore," and then a week later,
So since he's,
Very sick man.
and I may be jumping ahead, but I'm curious, and I'm
You're fine.
kind of popping these off as they come to my head. Since his conviction, has he tried to reach out at all or anything?
No, actually, none of my family knows where I live.
Oh, that's great.
None of
Yeah.
my family, besides
agree.
my sister, has my cell phone number.
Even better.
Yeah, and nobody.
So
in his
to your
family
knowledge,
talks
he
to me.
hasn't made any efforts to try to reach out or find you and
But I'll tell you this, and even though I am where I am and I do what I do, if I were to find, because technically in 10 years he can get an appeal because he'll be
Right.
elder. If he gets released, you will see me hide underneath the table. Even though he's 70 at that point. I
Right.
still have so much fear ingrained into me, even though
sure.
I logically
not?
know that I'm safe, I can't shake it.
No, I'm sure. Is it like a local? Like, did you grow up around here? Mm-hmm. You did.
I grew up in Londell.
Okay, yeah, because it is pretty close to home,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, there's a chance that you could cross paths
Yeah.
with one of the two again sometime in your life,
I run into my mom.
just by accident.
I see my mom. She doesn't know I see her, but I see my mom quite frequently out and about in public, and I purposely avoid her. I'm very close to my grandmother, who is my mom's mom, and I'll purposely avoid like family reunions because it's not that I don't care I don't mind being around my mom. I can ignore her. My mom is not entitled to that space with my daughter.
Sure.
You know,
No,
so
I wouldn't. If it was someone like that, they'd be out of my life.
Yep.
And I would never talk to them ever again.
Because before I had her, I would take grandma to certain events or something. If my mom was there, I would play nice because
I would probably have a restraining order on them. I'd make sure like block their numbers.
it's all because
I'd want like no contact at all. Like if this dude ever tried to call, your mom ever tried to call, I don't even think it's like out of like spite or hatred or well, maybe I guess, but still, I don't think that's like would be unjustified. I would never want to hear from these people ever again in my life.
I don't want to, but I have a lot of love for my grandma, and that's her daughter. And so I don't want to put her in a position where she feels like she has to choose. Mm-hmm. I would never want that for her.
Do you think your grandma's on your side? Does your grandma believe you
Yes.
about this situation?
You hesitated, Bo.
Yes.
At once upon a time, did you question that?
No. I just don't want to put my grandma in it.
Sure, you don't
don't
have to
involve
make
her
your
in any
mom
of it.
or your grandma choose sides.
We had a brief conversation shortly after it came about, and she's like, "Bonita, why didn't you tell me? Me and your grandpa, we would have done something." I'm like, "Grandma, I was a kid.
Yeah.
You're asking me to make an adult decision as a kid." And she was like, "We would have done something, Bonita." And I'm like, "I know,
Bonita?
Bonita."
Is that how you're supposed to pronounce your name?
Yeah.
I thought it was Bonita.
No, my grandma's name is Bonnie.
Okay.
And so I'm named after her, so it's Bonita.
Bonita. Okay.
So I try to
Oh,
shelter.
you were introduced as Bill.
Yeah, no, that's what I go by. I try to shelter my grandma away from that because she doesn't have stake in that, and she shouldn't have to deal with it.
Sure. It would be hard. Mm-hmm. It really would be hard. I would like to think that your grandma would be on your side. I would like to think if I was in your grandma's shoes, I'd be like, trying to straighten up my kid. But I don't know. I've never been in those shoes before, so I can't say
I specifically
what someone should do.
told her, "Don't worry about it. You keep doing what you do. Like, that's your daughter. because my grandma's untouchable. Like, she is a saint on this earth. So.
Now, what about your real dad?
My biological father, I do not have a relationship with.
Local? I mean, like he didn't pass away or nothing?
No, he's still around. He's in St. James.
Okay, not a good dude?
No.
Okay. So you just don't have a relationship with him?
No.
You were not...
He's also done things to kids
Whoa.
that I can't talk about.
Okay. So now it sounds like there's a pattern
Is that an active case?
with your mom.
It's not, but I'm not going to throw people in it.
I got you.
Honestly, it sounds like there's some deeper stuff down the line. Like, because like if he was that way, maybe your mom's attracted to someone like that. I don't know.
Sure. So
I'm just making stuff up here, but
there is a psychology.
I'm just looking at the red flags popping up in my head, and it's like, hey.
There is a psychology where like these perpetrators go for a type of person. They go for a type of individual. So
another predator.
Well, a lot of times the perpetrators go after
Moms with kids.
moms with kids.
Single moms.
Sure, because
They build that relationship with a mom. They find the boundaries, and they start grooming kids.
And my biological dad was very abusive to my mom physically. And so she was already battered. And then she had this dude that she got married with after
I don't know.
after 3 months of meeting
Sounds like
him.
you're making excuses for your
No,
mom.
hey, believe me, you will not see me make an excuse for my mom.
If I'm with someone and there is what's the word? Accusations that they're doing stuff like this, they're gone out of my life.
Well, they should be.
No question in my mind at all. Like, get lost. I never want to talk to you or ever see you again. And I will be forever haunted that the fact that I was even with somebody that was like that. So
Most of the
I'm
kids,
not giving your mom that kind of excuse that she was abused or anything like that, because so were you, and you didn't turn out like that.
No, but I am not typical. I am not the typical standard
Really?
that you would
Very
see.
true.
A lot of people fall into it.
They don't fall into it. I mean, yes. So you will see a lot of stuff where,
Like they accept it.
you'll see where offenders say, well, it happened to me when I was a kid. So that is a route that goes.
But is that something they just lie and make up just to get away with it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, what do you think?
No.
A lot of individuals who grow up with being abused like this, they do struggle their entire life because they don't have a support system. They don't have the ability to get help mentally like they need to. And a lot of times they try to self-medicate. So a lot of times they're
Drugs,
addicts.
alcohol.
Sure. Now, have you ever heard that a lot of people that are obese, the reason, like I think they did a case study on it, and come to find out, a lot of people that are like overly obese, like extremely overweight, a lot of them were sexually abused as a kid, and that's what they turned to was food.
Never
Heard that?
I've never heard
can-
that.
Will you look that up, Ariel?
I can actually believe that because I do struggle with binge eating disorder.
So I can't remember what it was, and I wish I knew a little more about it, but
What happened to just loving food? I mean, that's my problem.
It's because it's the one thing that they can't control. And I'm 100%.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's legit what it is. I think that's what they turn to, right? They turn that as comfort.
I mean, I could see that in like the extreme, like neglect cases where they're not feeding the kids, and then as an adult, they have the control over when they can eat and what they can eat.
Sure.
I can see that.
But think about it like this. So my dad would abuse me and then make me breakfast,
Like a reward.
like a comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah. He'd make me my favorite breakfast. Or, he would reward me with, you can go to Wagner's, which is a local gas station in Londell, and get you candy.
By the way, I would not go there. You never know what's going to happen there. It's in Franklin County, just so you know.
Okay.
Listen.
Well, I don't go through Lone Delaware.
I've been there once, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure like my car's going to get stolen or I'm going to get shanked walking
come
in.
on.
Oh, that's crazy.
Isn't there only one gas station there?
Yes, there's one.
It's the only gas
That's
station
the one.
there?
That's the one.
Well, this is what I was talking about. Okay, so this is from theatlantic.com. It says research suggests childhood sexual abuse increases the odds of adult obesity by between 31 and 100%. which is pretty
That's pretty broad.
pretty broad. One study found that about 8% of all cases of obesity and 17% of class 3 severe obesity can be attributed to the form of child abuse. Mm-hmm. And the reason I don't even like know exactly how I know about this. Like I think it was like through a podcast or just do like some random research or a book or something. But a doctor was talking about how he was like having patients come to him, and like obese patients. Like he was like, I don't know what they called them, doctors, but he had a lot of these obese patients coming to them, and like he had like a checklist, and they had to fill out like the survey, and like he had to try to figure out like why they had so much problems with their health, like why they were so overweight. And it was like he was like, it was years in, and one of his patients came to him regularly, and they got to really know him, and as they were talking, come to find out they were sexually abused at a very young age. And they got to talking more, and he talked about, this gentleman, the patient, talked about how he used food as comfort, because as a very young kid, that's the only thing he had. He didn't have drugs, he didn't have alcohol, he didn't have all this stuff to turn to, but he had food. And so he could go lock himself in a bedroom, take the food in there, and like that was his like comfort place, you know? And so like he just ate all the time. Mm-hmm. And so then the doctor, like it spawned like a thing in the doctor's head where he wanted to put it on his chart, his interview thing, that when people come in, they fill it out, and he's like, you don't have to fill it out if you don't want to, but I would appreciate it. You know, he was just building like a case study on it all, just like seeing what it was. And I thought he said it was something like 40 or 50% of his patients that were coming in had been sexually abused as a kid, and, and it became a thing where I think that was what kind of spawned like a big study on it.
Yeah, I could 100% see that for sure, because it's something that, I mean, I deal with it. I don't look like I do, but I do the hiding of food, and I eat until I almost puke, and I get very territorial about certain foods, and I can't put certain foods in the house, because if I do, like, it's over. So 100%, because it's comforting, and it was the only comfort I had for years. Right.
And that's why it made so much sense to me.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's like a normal thing on a doctor's, like, I don't know if it was just him or if they started doing it like worldwide, but I wonder like how much research is actually out there on it, like how much people actually looked into it.
And getting help for that is next to impossible.
Oh, yeah.
As an adult that's been sexually abused?
I cannot, well, you know.
Because by then, is it like they just get brushed off?
Well, I've been seeing a counselor for longer than I want to admit, 13 years, and I see a psychiatrist for medication, but getting insurances to approve you seeing like just simply a dietitian is impossible, because there's no medical necessity. So I can't get in with a nutrition to have them help me build a valid meal plan that I can stick to, work with macros and things, because I can't afford a nutritionist or a dietitian out of pocket.
Right.
And insurances don't care. They say there's not a reason for you to see one.
Right. And it's almost like it should be part of the exam. Mm-hmm. Right. And if it's been proven that you've been sexually abused as a child, I feel like you're entitled to that.
Absolutely.
Like if that's really a cause, I mean, now you're living with this problem, or is problem the right word?
Yeah.
Or this situation that you're having to deal with because of something that happened to you as a child that was out of your control.
Yeah. And it never goes away. Like, no matter how much work you put into it, it just does not, like, your effects, because I deal with PTSD from it.
I feel like that dude should have to be paid for it. That should be part of his sentencing.
Wow.
He should be paying you out, like, for the medication that you have to do, for the counseling you have to do, for your gym membership, for all this stuff, right? Because it's not saying that, like, you're going to be, like, perfect if it never happened to you, but you wouldn't have a lot of these... I don't know
issues. That's something that is.
Yeah, I don't want to call it an issue.
No, I mean, call it what it is. It's an issue, and it's very stigmatized too. So, like, as an adult, if you talk about your issues as a kid, and I don't know, Lindy, you can correct me, but I'm sorry, Lind, you can correct me.
She's always called me Lindy.
Always called him that. But it's almost stigmatized, so you're not supposed to talk about that stuff because you're attention seeking. You're looking for a reason to have something wrong with you. And so there's that whole, as an adult, you have to face that. It's just not accepted. And so
I just think it depends on your crowd. You know, I think it depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think if anyone says you're attention seeking, screw them.
Right.
Honestly, you should have a podcast of your own, and you should be talking about it every single day, and you should be making TikToks and reels, and you should be putting it on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and everywhere in the world because, dude,
I'm annoying enough about it.
Huh?
I'm annoying enough about it without all that.
Dude, there's people out there that are going through it that need somebody. You're on the recovery, the warrior side of it, but there's people out there that are still going through, what was the first stage you called it?
Victim.
The victim, and then the survivor part of it. Mm-hmm. You know, going through those stages, and they might be watching your videos on TikTok or YouTube or wherever while they're hiding out under their bed or wherever they're hiding out at their house. You know, they're watching your videos, and it's getting them through it. That's why it's so important.
But that's the thing. Talking about it, they got to relive it every single time, right? I mean, how
would it be
hard
tough?
was it for you for the first time to really openly talk about it, aside from during the investigation?
You know, it wasn't hard for me. It's not hard for me to talk about it because it needs to be talked about, and I'm not
Well, what about at
embarrassed by
first?
it. Even then, it was more so I was so worried about what people were going to say, what my classmates
That's why you
were
need
going to
That's
think.
why you need to make it, right? And you're saying that she has to relive it, and if that's the reason why you don't want to make the videos or anything like that, then I'm like, yeah,
I agree.
Okay,
I think it's good. I mean, I think that's got to be part of the healing process, you know. But some people can't overcome that.
I think it also to find a community because it's like you become very individualized, where you feel like you have no one to talk to, or you have no one that's like you, and you have no one that can even relate to what you're going through. But then you have this person out there that talks about it and talks about how they got through it, what they did, what they're doing now, things like that. I think that would really help people. And
when you can inspire people, other victims, you know, people that are currently dealing with it, to reach out to somebody and disclose and tell their story, you know?
Yep.
And for some, and for me in particular, but for some, the more you talk about it, the more therapeutic it is because you're stifled your entire life. Mm-hmm. You're told your entire life you cannot.
Well, and you're saying too that you feel like you're saying, and it's wrong. Like what you're saying is wrong. Like you're like, I sound like you said that you just sound like you're being annoying about it, and it's like it's not. No, that's not annoying at all.
So one of the
you should be talking about it. That's what I'm saying. You should be talking about it. You should be freaking telling the whole world about it every single day.
One of the unfortunate side effects of my childhood is don't you dare laugh, I am a people pleaser through and through. So, if anybody gives me the slightest pushback, aside from when I'm in my advocate mode, I, hide in the corner and cry. I can't handle it because I feel like I'm being judged, and I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have, all these different things. So advocate me when I'm with a kid and I'm handling that is different than, my personal self.
I think talking about it, though.
I was going to argue at first, but you clarified that at the end. I would say there are definitely two different mindsets there.
Yeah, if you mess with me in advocate mode, I'm going to come for you.
Look out.
Sure. I think talking about it, the more you talked about it, the more, you would be, I think it would build some strength.
I did make some TikToks on it, and TikTok took all of them down.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They said I was violating standards.
Whoa. That's kind of crazy. Have you tried Facebook or Instagram, though? YouTube?
I post stuff on Facebook and Instagram, but
videos of you talking?
No.
So this wasn't
that.
This isn't your first podcast, is it? You've done something before.
I've done a smaller one. Yeah. One
Mm-hmm.
smaller one.
In person or over the phone or over the internet?
Not with cameras or anything. It was just a recorded in person with them.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cool though.
I forget what was the name of that one. You don't remember?
Did you like it?
Yeah, I was friends with him.
Okay.
It was for Mike Potter, Wandering something. I can't remember. I got too much going on up here.
That's all right.
How long ago was this?
2 years?
Yeah, I was gonna say a couple of years.
3 years?
Huh.
It was really good though.
Yeah.
We didn't go this in depth.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Well, I'm glad you're willing to share so much because even if you don't want to, I hope to inspire someone that has maybe gone through this in their life. And like, just so you know, like if you're watching this and you're going through what Bo's gone through, like get out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to get out of it, but listen to Bo or even reach out
Yeah.
to Bo.
Find somebody that you're comfortable with. Tell them.
I am always here for people. I've done speaking, like I've done public speaking on this, and I've always had at least one person come to me.
Well, it's Bonita, right? Is that how you said it? Bonita?
Yeah.
Hector. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure, like, if someone's listening, I want to make sure that they know who they can reach out to. Like, I just want to, like, because I bet there is going to be somebody that watches this someday, and I bet it will help them. Like,
I hope so.
I think it will. I truly believe it will.
It is mind-blowing to know how many kids are out there that have went through, even adults now, people that, during their childhood have went through something traumatic like that and never found the courage to disclose.
Yeah.
They just deal with it and they live with it. And like we touched a little bit on earlier, a lot of those people you'll see, those are your alcoholics, those are your drug addicts, those are the people that are coping in not so healthy ways.
Yes.
And, for anybody that doesn't understand their background or know their story because they just simply don't have the courage to tell it, they just see an alcoholic on the surface. They just see a drug addict. Oh, well, they need to get a job because they're out here stealing people's stuff and they're doing drugs. Well, let's look a little deeper if we could. Maybe they've been through something, very traumatic as a child or something that they're struggling to deal with, and this is their way of coping. Now, I'm not saying what they're doing is right, but that's their way of coping and trying to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And to spitball off of that too, like even dealing with kids in schools, it's easy to be like, oh, there's a dirty kid in class, or she's the slutty one who's posted pictures on Facebook and talking to older men. And these are all like, this kid might be the dirty one because they don't want to be presentable to the perpetrator. Mm-hmm. So they think the dirtier they are, the less likely they are to get perped. Yep. Or you have the girl who's over-sexualized who thinks this is how somebody's going to love me. Mm-hmm. I have to do this.
No, I can see that for sure.
We say that all the time.
Well, when you were talking about the drugs thing, we had someone local to our area that OD'd on heroin or fentanyl. I don't know which one, but definitely OD'd. He just got out of jail. I don't know how long he was in, but he just got out, went and did heroin, OD'd, and then that's how he died. And he was someone that like grew up around my age, our age, and everybody knew him. Like I remember thinking like he was a good. I mean, he definitely had a crazy side to him, but I just remember always thinking he was talented, had a lot going for him at a young age, and then got in all these drugs and just went downhill really bad. And when he passed away. Because quite a few people knew him and liked the guy, and some people were saying that there were some people that were saying like they thought he was sexually abused, like he didn't live with, he didn't grow up with his parents, and they just kind of like talked about the situation. And I was never close to him, but when they started to break it down, I was like, oh well, that makes a lot more sense. Like that makes a lot more sense why he got in all this stuff and why he struggled so hard with it. Because he was trying to deal with something. He was coping with something.
It's harder for males, too.
Some people, when it's so bad, I'm sure it is. Because I'm sure you got to act tough. As a guy, you're supposed to be.
That's what you're told,
Yeah, you're supposed to try to be a man. You can't have emotions. You can't have.
You're not allowed to talk about your feelings,
Right. And I'm sure that's probably what happened. They were just getting shoved down and didn't talk about it, and then turn to drugs to deal with it, and then just more drugs and harder drugs and harder drugs and until you die. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was very young.
That's what I'm saying. I've been guilty in the past as well. Just you see somebody, it's like, oh well, that person's homeless. Well, why are they homeless? Are they homeless because they put themselves in that position, or is there something else that has gone on in their life to make them end up where they are?
Yeah.
Same alcoholics and drug addicts. You see somebody where like, well, they're high on meth. It's like. You want to think negative about that or about that person just because of the person they are now or what they're going through now. But there's probably some underlying issue there that has led them down that path.
Yeah.
There are people, don't get me wrong, that have had, have grown up a good upbringing and just for whatever reason they just make a poor choice and they get roped into the drugs and alcohol, and
Yep.
you know, they just.
But a lot of them that I knew, because I've lost some friends, a lot of them that I knew, like I've talked about, like their past. Like I remember watching them as a kid grow up, and you never expected them to go down it. But then like once they finally like pass away, and like you start looking at their past, and it's like, well, yeah, but he went through this, and he was going through this and this and this, and it's like, you know, I remember when they did pills for the first time, and then I remember when they talked about doing this for the first time, and then like, you know, I just remember like what parts of their life they had going on, and it's like, okay, it kind of makes sense, you know, like I at least understood why they were doing it. Like I wouldn't like say it was a good idea or that they should have done it, but I was like, I can understand why he chose to do that at that time, and it's like, it's just crazy. It's very crazy. So can we go back to your story? Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Because, you know, we kind of got like to 7 to 12 years old, and we didn't really get to talk past that.
Sure.
And you said it happened up until you were
15.
15. Okay. So what happened at 15 years old that changed? How, like, what happened? I want to know, like, did you call it in? Did he get caught? Is this when it ended?
It just stopped.
He just stopped doing it.
Just randomly stopped.
Randomly stopped. I want to...
And was he doing it
pick
to
me.
your sister, too?
Pick me. I can almost bet why.
Okay, let's...
Why?
Did you get too old?
I don't know.
That is a crazy thought.
It happens.
It's a very common
That is
thought.
a insane thought.
The only reason why I say I don't know is because he was so adamant about him being in love with me. And it was him making love to me. And
Right.
it was him, like, he wanted to be my husband and, you know, all those things. So that's why I just don't know. You asked about my sister.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. When I was 12, actually, I had decided that I was done. And he woke me up one morning and he's like, hey, we're going to do this. And I'm like, no, the fuck, we're not. I can cuss, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm like, no, we're not. You know, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't like this. And I don't know where I got that courage to do that, but I did. And he was like, okay, go get your sister. And I was like, no. And after that, I never fought him. Because my sister was my reason for literally breathing at that point in time. And so everything I did was to keep her safe and to allow her to have a dad. Because I didn't have one. I had him, you know.
Now, is he your sister's biological dad?
He is. Yeah, so
But, okay, I want to know, like, did he sexually abuse her, too?
he did.
Obviously, like, physically abuse her.
He did.
See, and that's even crazier.
So
I mean, it's all crazy, but that's even crazy because that is, like, his...
Showing flesh and blood.
Yeah.
So the way
So now that's also just... Yeah.
the way it all came about was I actually stayed living there until I was 19, just because I wanted to make sure that I thought that I could see it and I could handle it. So I moved
What do
out.
you mean you thought you could see it?
I thought I would see it. I knew how I acted, and I knew what my way of like dealing with it was.
You thought you would catch him doing it?
I thought that I would know he was doing it. Like I thought I would see a behavior change in her because I was a perfectionist.
So she wouldn't admit that it was happening to her.
No, I was quiet.
So you guys were both in the same household, going through the same thing. They didn't talk about it?
No. And we still actually, as adults, have never talked about it to each other.
Whoa. Because she don't want to talk about it? Or because it's just that
I am
weird of a
always
situation to talk about?
I am always here if my sister wants to talk about it. I'm a very big advocate for it's not us to get, it's for them to give to us. So if
Yeah.
my sister wanted to give me her disclosure, I'm here and I'll listen.
Have you told her that?
She knows.
Okay. Well, if she doesn't, and she's listening to the podcast, go talk to your sister. I feel like it would help. I don't know. I feel like it could help, though.
So at 21, I got a text message from her. We remember this differently. We have talked about this particular portion of the story, and we remember it differently. I remember it as getting a text message from her saying, hey, if I don't text you back, please don't text me, because that means that Dad took my phone, because he would take her phone every night, and she would have to delete her messages and stuff because he would go through it. And I said, okay. She's like, has he ever done anything to you? And I'm like,
You probably just sank.
oh, yeah. I said, what are you talking about? And she was like, you know what I'm talking about. And I said, no. What are you asking me, basically? And she's like, has he ever had sex with you? And I think every organ in my body fell to my toes at that point. And I just blacked out, essentially. And I said, is he doing it to you? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to school and you're going to tell your counselor. And you're going to let your school counselor know. And they'll know what to do. At the time, I had no friggin' idea what I was doing.
How old is she? And how old are you guys at this point?
I'm 21 and she's 16.
Okay.
So she went to the school counselor. She actually told 2 friends. And
Because you had moved out of the house at this point.
Mm-hmm. She had told 2 friends at school. They signed her up to see the counselor. And she went and told the counselor. Because the friends signed her up to go.
Yeah.
Blew the cover off of all of it. So they actually called Franklin County, because we live in Illinois, and it was Detective Hodson Pillar that handled the case. And they referred her to the Children's Advocacy Center, and at the time it was in Sullivan. And so my mom took her down there. Well, my dad figured out that something was wrong when she didn't come home from school. So he's blowing up her phone and my mom's phone. And she gives her forensic interview of everything, and they get in touch with me, and they're like, hey, your mom and your sister needs to stay at your house. So I'm like, that's fine. They're like, hey, don't talk to your sister about it. I'm like, no worries. So for a couple weeks.
Like when they call, you don't be like, yeah, he was doing it to me too?
No, not at that point. So in the forensic interview, actually, and I only know this because the detective told me, but my sister said, I think it's happened to my sister.
Wait, say that again? I think I somehow...
You're fine. My sister told the forensic interviewer, I think that this has happened to my sister.
Oh, okay.
So then they followed up with me about it later.
Gotcha.
But I didn't tell them over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why?
so
Why not?
at that point, my sole concern was my sister. Because
it's got to be on your terms too, right?
yeah.
Okay.
My concern was my sister, though, at that point. My stepdad is a very dangerous man.
Yeah. Clearly.
And I wanted her safe. So I didn't give a shit about me at this point at all, ever, really. But she came and stayed with me for a few weeks, and my mom actually decided not to come home one night from work, and so I'm like, where is she? She wasn't answering her phone or anything. She comes home. Well, she comes to my house. She's all happy. And I'm like, what are you happy about? And she's like, your dad doesn't want a divorce. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And she's like, yeah, he still wants to be with me. And I'm like, okay.
Like, hello, just had sex with my daughter, but he doesn't want a divorce.
Right.
Yeah.
Daughters, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Did you say like whenever they come to, did you ever say anything to your mom? Like when they came to live with you, were you like, hey mom, yeah. Like not only did you, like you did it to me too.
But for
No.
your mom to like be happy about that.
Yeah.
Right.
And be like okay with that. Like, oh hey, he's being investigated for sexually abusing my daughter.
Again.
Yeah.
Another daughter again.
Right, but at that point she didn't know anything had happened to Bo. So
Well, that's
I
not
was 7.
true.
I was 7.
well,
remember?
that's right. Because
Yeah.
from the other, from the other.
But you
hotlines,
said at a young age that there was like multiple calls from like neighbors and stuff too of abuse.
Yeah, like physical abuse. And it was
Yeah.
because of that physical abuse call that I disclosed the sexual abuse at 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have
It's not
your
the
oldest
first
daughter.
time.
You have your oldest daughter disclosing this as a young child, and now you have a 16-year-old daughter disclosing the
Doing it
same
again.
thing. It's
Doing
like
it again.
at what point you're like, oh, okay, well, this is obviously
Right.
something's going on or has
Right.
happened. here.
Unless, that's what I was saying earlier, unless your mom is of similar traits. That's just my opinion.
If you want another, like, don't need to know detail, he also took a prescription of Viagra for a really long time, and they were not intimate.
Well, that's a red flag.
And I only know that because my mom was complaining to me about it one time when I was like 17, and I'm like,
That's because he's with me.
yeah. So,
Whoa.
Man, that's heavy.
at some point in time, my stepdad decided, hey, I'm going to leave and go stay at a family member's or a friend's or somewhere. So you and my sister could go stay at the house. So they went and stayed there. And she had a meeting with a prosecutor that my mom kept dodging. And so finally she agreed to take her to the meeting with the prosecutor. And my sister messaged me and she was like, they keep telling me that like if I tell them that didn't happen or I take it back, they'll get me a car. and I won't have a curfew, and I forget what else, or something else, something with a phone, I think. And I'm like, you need to tell the prosecutor that this is happening. You you need to do that. I did not anticipate what was going to happen that day. So I'm at work and I get a phone call from Kenny, and he's like, hey, can you take custody of your sister? And I'm like, hold on. What? And he's like, we arrested your mom. And I'm like,
Well, what were you doing at this time in your life? Like, where were you working?
I was working at a telemarketing company.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So,
I'm just trying to paint a picture here.
yeah, I was just
Trying to paint a picture.
getting by.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And I'm like, he says, if you can't take her, she's going to go into the system. And he's like, which we can do. I just need to know. And I'm like, no, bring her to me. I'll take her. So my mom went to jail and got charged with tampering with witness. And my sister.
She got that because of the bribery for the car and stuff. And how? So your sister said like, hey, they're trying to bribe me.
Yep.
Okay.
And the prosecutor called Kenny and said, I need you to come arrest her. We're going to charge her.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Did she bribe your sister in front of the prosecutor?
No, my sister just told her.
Told the prosecutor like, hey, she's promising me a car and stuff.
And also my mom was allowing phone calls. Was calling my stepdad and giving the phone to my sister.
So she wasn't supposed to be doing that.
So there was recordings and stuff? Or
I
no?
don't think so.
No.
But there was still at least phone logs. Right.
Yeah, there would have had to have been phone logs, but yeah, so I got custody of my sister at 16. Mom refused to give me any of her information.
Are you living in Lomdale? Or
I'm
you
actually
moved
living
away?
in Union at this time.
So you okay? Not very far, but you get away
Yeah.
from it. Okay.
Well, my sister she had a boyfriend at this time too, became a teenage mom in the middle of all this too. So I'm dealing with all of this, and he ends up going on the run. They can't locate him. I don't know where he's at. And through some good old police work.
Red flag again.
Yeah.
Right? Red flag.
Nothing says guilty like running away. Detective Hodson Pillar actually hears from somebody that knew him that he might have been in the Arkansas area. So Kenny spends some time looking through some newspaper articles for Arkansas, trying to figure out, like, maybe his name will be in there somewhere. Maybe he got arrested for drunk driving. Maybe he, whatever. So after some time, he gets this newspaper from down there, and on the front page is an overturned concrete truck, and my stepdad's standing next to it. He was the driver of the concrete truck. So he calls down there, talks to I think it was State Patrol that handled that case, and he says, hey, this guy is wanted up here for this. Like, you work this case, like, this is him. So the guy is like, well, I'm on vacation, but I'll go get him. So he goes in on his vacation, grabs my dad, holds him. Kenny drives down there, gets him, brings him back. And
Kenny called, or they called up to Kenny?
Kenny called down there.
So, I mean, how did Kenny get lucky? There's a lot of towns in Arkansas.
God.
Oh, yeah, a lot of it's right place, right time,
Yeah.
and a lot of hard work,
Right.
I owe a lot
I
to
mean,
Kenny.
that is like literally by the grace of God.
I've had cases like that, where
The dude got arrested and was on the front page of the newspaper, and that's how he got caught.
a different state.
In a different state.
Yeah.
In a different state. That is insane.
And Kenny didn't have to do any
He didn't
of
have to do that. That's
Yeah.
That was him.
taking that extra step and going
Yeah.
that extra mile.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Good on you, Kenny.
yeah, he's he just retired a couple years ago.
Rock
but
star.
he's awesome, and I owe him a lot. And it's actually really cool that I got to get into this field because I got to work with him for a while too on a professional capacity.
That is cool.
And he got to see like his work through fruition and bloom afterward, I guess. So.
Sure. Okay. So this scumbag gets arrested. They bring him back. What happens?
Court took from the time of disclosure to the time of conviction, it was 6 years.
Insane. Is he sitting in jail the whole time though?
No.
No, he gets out.
He got bonded, bond.
By the way, bonded out, bailed
Whichever
out.
one.
Bailed out by who?
I'm assuming his parents. I don't actually know.
I'm sure real scumbags too. I don't have a kid, but if my kid was arrested for sexually abusing children, I'd be like, that dude can rot in hell. I feel like I would.
You're not a parent.
I'm not a parent, so
So, I mean,
I can't say it.
that would put somebody in a very conflicting position, I would think.
Sure. I've seen parents do it before, though.
Yeah, I'm seeing it all the time.
Cut a kid completely off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't enable them, you know.
And my understanding, too, is they were very torn. Like, I was very close to my stepdad's father. They've both since passed, but I was very close to my stepdad's father. And I had saw him right before we went through to the jury trial. And he was crying, and he was like, I should have known. You know, I should have known. I can't wait for this to be over so I can have you come over. And then after the court, I never heard anything. So I don't really know what to do with that, but it's something I'll never know.
So for 6 years, he didn't go to jail.
No, multiple prosecutor. We went through multiple prosecutors, couple judges. Like, went through up to. We got to.
Why was
jury
it so
trial.
hard? Why was it so hard to prove it?
There's no proof.
What evidence do you have? This is all stuff that's happening over a 10-year period, right? 10 years?
Yeah.
10-year period. What physical evidence are you going to have when your last event? You're 21 at this point? Mm-hmm. You're 21. Your last event was when you were 15.
Right.
So
And then at
years?
7.
Yeah.
But there's no record of it.
No.
Because after 10 years, it disappears.
Well,
Well, at
and
7, yeah.
7 years. It's not like you can, from the last time that.
That's all. It's 7 years or 10 years that the document
7.
7. So everything disappears after 7 years.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying physical evidence wise, from the time she was 15 to 21, it's not like you can say, okay, we're going to send you to the hospital now. We're going to have you.
Even from 7 to 15, it's gone already.
Right. So, you don't have that physical evidence. You have the victim's word versus the suspect's word, essentially. Unless there's, based on where it took place at, you can build kind of a timeline of corroborating some stuff from the victim's statement or inconsistencies from the suspect's statement. You have to try to tie these pieces together, and.
But it's still extremely hard.
Yeah.
Still extremely
And that's why your conviction rate on these cases are so low, is because a lot of times you'll get a victim that comes out years and years later and says, hey, this happened to me. Mm-hmm. Well, now law enforcement has to pick up the pieces and try to build the best case they can. The only thing they have is a statement.
With everything being digital now, are records being kept longer? Because it's not like a kid can, at 7 years old, right? Like when you're older and something like that happens, and you get like whatever it is for the, what's it called, Lynn? Help me out here.
What do you,
Like whenever, like she would have called in at 7.
a report?
A report. You would get a physical report of it, right?
Well, it depends. We wouldn't give the report to a child. We give it to their parent. But if they requested a copy of it.
Right. As an adult, you can request a copy of the report.
Correct.
And keep it.
Yep.
But as a kid, you can't do that.
Right.
So you can't physically get it. So I feel like with the digital world now, I feel like those things should
Well,
be.
it's easier to retain those now than it was back then, because
Yeah.
they had to retain a physical copy.
So actually
Right.
about that, it's still a 7-year rule within children's division. So I am currently.
See, isn't that? But see, that's where it's messed up.
Well, I am
That's where the
currently
problem.
trying to get into the ear of people. So if you are with the state listening to this and you can help me with this, let me know. Because I want to get that actually changed to where. So the whole problem with this
Dude,
is.
hear me out here. Sorry to cut you off.
You're fine.
You should do content. You should start a non-for-profit, and you should have the non-for-profit go to making some type of app or program that every time one of these cases gets set up, it gets put in this program where it's saved there to where it automatically does it. Anytime something like this, a report gets thrown up, it gets put in there for free on them, and everything is generated through a non-for-profit.
Yeah.
And
It's hard to do that when you have, because those are confidential records.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that.
Oh,
with a
so it can't
not-for-profit.
just, yeah, okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
Okay, well, it was a,
No, yeah, you're onto something, but
Yeah, I was trying.
anytime you're dealing with confidential information like that, or because we have to, law enforcement, we have to keep those records for, I think, forever when they're involving a child.
We
So,
keep ours at the CAC for forever.
Yeah, we have to keep them forever. So we have, I know, down in the basement of the courthouse, in dusty old boxes, there's files of cases from
oh, there
the
is.
70s and 80s, I'm sure.
Well, you were saying after 7 years, they got,
In children's division.
Just children's division's records.
So children's division is its own entity within the state that they do their own investigation to basically make sure the kid is safe, and they have findings of their own. So they are on like a kid level, like a safety level, whereas these guys are criminal.
Right.
So for children's division, for them to do what's called a preponderance of evidence, they have to have like 51% proof of burden that it happened or likely happened. And if they don't have that, then they have to unsubstantiate it, which means it's unfounded. And so after that, it falls off. So being an adult, I can't go back and get that record because it fell off. So I'm trying to get in touch with people that can help me change that, because the reason why it does that is they're trying to protect the people that have accusations against them that truly are false. And while I understand that,
It's a small percentage.
It is. And I think that those records, those calls should always remain on that child's record so that way they can pull.
Because here's the thing too,
agree.
if we're building a case now and a suspect is named 20 years ago in a children's division report and we're building a case now against them, this children's division is going to search the record for that suspect, and it's going to pull up every record that they were attached to, right? So every record that suspect's potentially attached to is more information that can help us, because maybe we have a weak case in the one we're working now, but maybe there was a couple other cases that were maybe unsubstantiated years prior, but it was the same type of behavior that the suspect did, or it was the same type of criminal offense, did it in the same manner, that can help us say, well, hey, there was this 6 years ago. He did it the exact same way that this victim here is reporting it. You can try to tie those together, and it can help an investigation by keeping those records.
So, in your case, well, was it? I mean, it was a case against him, right?
Right.
At this point, just for your sister, though, right?
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, whenever they came, so initially when she came to live with me, because it was a very short turnaround from the time that my mom was staying with me to the time that I got temporary custody of my sister. But Detective Hodson Pillar came with Teresa Lustwerk, who was another fantastic investigator.
She's great.
They came to the house and they actually fully interviewed me. And I gave a full, I think it was 10 to 12 pages written statement of everything that I could remember at that point. And then they used that as well. So whenever they charged him, he had 24 counts between the two of us that he was going for. And they couldn't charge anything. So when I was 3 to 7, I was living in Crawford County, and they couldn't charge anything from that. So all of my charges are from 7.
Separate jurisdictions.
It's a different jurisdiction. It's Franklin County.
So in that case, they could have potentially forwarded their investigation with Benita and her sister and sent that information to Crawford County and said, hey, we have information that this took place from this year to this year with this victim. Start your own investigation. And they could have piggybacked off of that and potentially tried to charge him through Crawford County as well. But there's a lot of moving parts there and a lot of things going on for that to happen.
Sure.
And one trial can affect another if they go into trial.
So
Okay. So you just focus on the one.
right, go with what you have, the strongest case on, and run with it.
Okay. That's weird that it's like that.
Yeah.
That it can't follow over into it.
Yep.
Just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense when it comes to a situation like this. It's just like, why not? Why would their county not just pull into this county and work together and just put it all, merge it all into one? Okay, so 6 years go by before anything actually happens.
Yep. We go to the jury trial. So offenders actually have a lot of rights in court.
It's ridiculous,
And
in my
it's
opinion.
astonishing. They help pick out their jury. They can choose that we can't sit in for any of the court. So as victims, we get shoveled in a room that is like half this size, nothing on it. No, nothing. There's a table and there's like 4 chairs. And you have to sit there all day long. I can't watch my sister testify, which is, for me, it was fine because I don't want to do anything to make her uncomfortable.
Sure.
She couldn't watch me testify. We couldn't watch Kenny testify. We couldn't watch him testify.
Yeah. I guess I understand.
Yeah.
Just so, because it has to keep it, I mean, it has to
You wanna
be
keep
private
it-
so people aren't
right.
playing off of someone
Well,
else's
and
line.
you want to keep it unbiased. You want, as a prosecution, you want to say, we're going to give the offender every opportunity to prove that he's innocent, right? Innocent until proven guilty. So for the prosecution side of things, you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to give them the edge or the advantage in a way, just so that you can come through with your case and make it a slam dunk and say, gotcha.
Yeah.
There's no way without a doubt you committed this crime.
So 6 years go by, you have this case. I mean, you're going to do multiple court cases, right? You keep going,
Yeah, we
For
got
whatever
to,
reason, they keep getting pushed back.
finally got to the jury trial, which is the, boss king.
Okay, so there's only one jury trial?
Yeah. The jury trial is where the end.
That's where you determine guilt or
Of
innocence.
the end of that. I'll get into the next chapter of that, but that's the end of that. So my sister testifies, I testify, and then he testifies. And then they do the closing arguments. And, testifying it sucks as a Vic. Defense attorneys aren't outwardly mean to victims because that looks bad to the jury. But they say some things in ways that you're like...
Very manipulative.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you're doing all of this in front of the person.
Yeah. And you never, it's not like you're an attorney. It's not like you're, like...
Right, you're not trained or experienced in testifying in front of a group of strangers, essentially, and your perpetrator.
Yeah. Right. And you're sitting in front of a judge and lawyers and attorneys and probably even some peers of your life. I'm sure your mom was sitting out there.
My mom was out there.
I'm sure there was family members out there. No, nobody else
I can tell you as an officer, like a new officer coming in, when you go up there to testify for your first few times, and even now, depending on the case, like, you still get nervous, or at least I do on certain cases. Like, I know what information I have to testify to, and I'm comfortable with it. I know that information, but it's still rattling because you have to be able to, tell everything and remember everything that you did.
Yeah, right.
And tell exactly like it's supposed to. So it's still unnerving because you got everybody looking at you. You have the judge looking down at you, and you have a prosecutor or a defense attorney that's just grilling you.
Right.
So
no. This isn't even like close to like comparable, but I remember going to court when I was kicking a tenant out of my house. You helped me on one of them.
Yep.
It wasn't that one. It was the one before that.
Okay.
But if they don't show up to the court case, it's like it defaults and like I automatically win it. For some reason, they still made me go sit up in front of everyone, and because you know what? It was that one.
Was it?
It was that case, and I remember because I remember my attorney being there, and because it was like $10,000 worth of damage.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting up there, and like the judge, like he's like reading off everything that's damaged, the prices, all this stuff, what they're accusing this lady of doing to my house, and the dude that was squatting in it. And I was like so nervous, even though I had it was like a pretty, like it was like a guaranteed win case, everything like that. But I was nervous because it was like
it's just
totally out of my realm.
It's just a setting, the setting just
yeah. And the judge was like super nice. And I remember like she looked at me and she's like, "They really do this much damage?" And I was like, "Yeah, they did." And it was just like, I don't know, it was just like, it was totally out of my element. I didn't like it. And like I said, it's not even like remotely to the level of the case that you're at. And I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to be there and even have to try to like muster up the courage to even talk.
Yeah, going through that and then having to sit there and testify would be just mind-blowing.
Because they're forcing you to talk out loud about it.
Right. And so he's sitting there. My mom's sitting directly behind him because she's supporting him. I have some people there for me. I have my husband and some really good friends that are with me. And then there's also 2 rows of attorneys. I didn't know who they were. They were just people sitting there. So there's
26 at this time? How old are you at this time?
27.
27. Yeah.
And so there's 2 rows of attorneys, and I didn't know it, but there was actually like a reporter there too. And so all these people that I don't know are watching. My dad is just like, just death staring me. And so when I walk in, a bailiff walks with me. He walks to my left because that's the side that my stepdad is on. And he walks me through the gate up to the seat and then stands directly to my left. There's a bailiff standing on each side of the table where my stepdad is, and then another bailiff standing like in the hall or the lane for in between the rows. So it's like packed with people. So like I know I'm secure, but also like it's just that deep like embedded fear.
It's probably like a pressure feeling. Like you can probably just feel it in the air, like it's just weighing on you.
And they go into depth, like extreme depth, about just different things, and they try to pit my sister against me and me against her. And then he took the stand, and I don't know what he testified to, but then they did closing arguments, and basically the defense attorney attacked my character, saying what kind of older sister would leave a house with this and leave her little sister there. Doesn't sound like she's very protective to me, you know, things like that. And I had like 5 people at once, like, just touch me. So my director, when I got hired on the CAC, Kathy was actually my sister's advocate, and she's how I got into the field that I got into.
Okay.
She was with me too, and she stayed for the entire time. So
You got to be there for that?
well, I was.
Oh, okay,
there,
okay.
But Kathy
yeah.
was.
Yeah,
so
yeah, okay.
Kathy hired me after the court was over to be the advocate, but she was my sister's advocate whenever my sister went in.
Right.
So it's just kind of cool how that all ties in.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you know, we did court in one day. The judge at like 4 was like, we're not going home. Like, we're going to deliberate and we're going to get this done today. Like, I'm not doing this. And he was very nice to me and my sister. But the jury, they deliberated for, I think, 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. And they did guilty on 19 charges. The ones that they didn't do was due to some date discrepancies that they didn't like, but I'll take it. So then I had to wait a month to get to the sentencing because he chose a bench sentencing, which means the judge sentences him. And
Separate, you're kind of confused, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, but
So-
I don't want to interrupt
No,
your
you're
story.
fine.
So, like, you have your jury trial where you determine guilt or innocence. Once guilt is determined in front of the court, you have to set another court date so that that person can be sentenced for the crime that they're guilty of, right? So there's bench sentencing, where meaning the judge determines your sentence based on what you were guilty of, what you were found guilty of, or
They get to choose.
right,
judge
they
chooses
get
to
to choose the punishment for that crime, and there's obviously set ranges of punishment for certain crimes, but they have to remain within that range of punishment for that particular crime, or the jury can. The jury can determine the sentencing. So, but the perpetrator or the suspect gets to choose that.
Oh, okay.
They get to
Just-
choose whether the jury convicts or whether the jury sentences them or whether the judge does.
And does he get to know how, and like, does he get to know like how many of the jury chose which direction or the other?
they,
I
don't think so.
Does that he get to, because I feel like he gets the upper hand. Like if he's like, oh, this seems like the judge is being a little nicer today, or if he's like the jury seems very like not like if he gets a fine, like how many of the jury all decided he was guilty? Obviously more than
I know. I'm sure they keep track of that. The judge's office
don't know?
probably would, but I don't think that they disclose that. I could be
like
wrong.
how many are in a jury?
12.
12.
12. That's right. 12 angry men, or what was it? 12 grumpy men, or is it was that movie?
Either way.
Yeah. If all 12 said he was guilty.
Well, then a lot of times they'll say at sentencing or at after the verdict, they'll say unanimously, the jury unanimously, meaning everybody.
Okay.
All
I
agreed.
don't remember if they said that. I was in such a
Well,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely.
All right. Going through all kinds of
But
emotions.
either way, in my opinion, if you're the suspect and a jury just found you guilty, why would you want them to pick your sentencing?
Yeah.
They believe you committed this heinous crime. Why would you want them? A lot of people, and that's common. A lot of people will throw themselves at the mercy of the judge, hoping that the judge will see some mercy in it
Sure.
and give them a lesser sentence.
Sure.
And
Okay.
so whenever they were doing the verdict, the first charge, they found not guilty. And I had a long way to go through the list of charges. But hearing the first one be not guilty,
Oh man,
I was like devastated.
Right.
sure you could hear a pin drop in that room.
I'm sure.
And I remember I'm like looking there and I just start crying. And I'm not a crier, so I was like in distress. And this one jury lady at the end looked over and they said, count to blah, blah, blah. And the judge was reading it off and she like nodded and like smirked and they said guilty. And then it was guilty and guilty.
This seriously like makes me almost tear up. Like it's just so crazy of a thing.
And they walked out. So after they were done, the judge released them. They have to walk past me. And I think every single one of them like nodded towards us. Like just like a silent nod.
And he's out on bond at this, like during all this, right? Uh-huh. So after he gets found guilty, he gets to walk away.
For a month. No. I apologize.
Did they
No,
take him?
he got retained.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
because one of my other friends who's a cop, he had been with me through all of it. And BJ, the bailiff, I don't know if you ever worked with her. Yeah.
BJ.
She walked over to him after they started reading the guilty and she basically told him, like, you want to take him in? And H is like, yeah. So H got to cuff him and take him in. And I remember they were walking him out the side door, like at the far end by the judge. And he just turns back and looks at me and just like, if I could have been dead, I would have. Like,
If looks could kill.
Hatred, yeah.
Yeah. Those people, like I listened to some of those court cases. I can't remember what the podcast was called right now, off the top of my head, but it's like one where they talk about like murder cases and like all kinds of just crazy cases like that. And they'll play the ladies will play the court case at the end sometimes, and the stuff some of these people have said, it will literally send just chills through your entire body. And it's like, dude, these people really do, like, the devil really is living in some of these people.
Oh, yeah.
And I truly believe, like, the devil is living in your stepdad. Like, he is living through him.
Their defense was basically that me and my sister were just angry teens because they were strict and they had rules, which wasn't very good. And he had a character witness, so I'll get to that, but he wanted to call another known sex offender as a character witness in court. And I'm like, what the hell are you
That's smart.
thinking? Yeah. Anyway, so we got to the sentencing.
Good character witness.
We got to
Birds of a feather flock together.
That's right.
Right?
We got to the sentencing and we gave our victim impact statement. My sister couldn't do it, and that's fine. Like, that is a stress that I can't even explain. And the judge made it very clear, like, one of you have to get up and talk, or it's going to change the way that I sentence. And I'm like, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it.
Well, your sister did too, right?
She did not get up and speak. The prosecutor gave her speech for her. But my sister was also postpartum. She just had a baby a couple months prior, so she just wasn't in the proper space. And so I got up and I gave my victim impact statement. And I'm just looking at him like dead in the eyes. And my mom's right behind him. And at one point I told him how he took my mom away from me. And he like scoffed. He went, huh. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me, dude. So anyway, the judge was like, I'm sentencing you to this and this and this, but they're to be served consecutive and concurrent. So essentially, he got sentenced to 302 years, but he did a 20-year lump for my sister and a 20-year lump for me to be served back to back. And
For a total of 40.
For a total of 40. And so after he called the prosecutor over and he wanted her to relay to us that he sentenced it that way because if he would have done the 302, it would have been a harsh sentencing and he would be more likely to get an appeal. So at this point, I'm thinking, it's done. The prosecutor's like, you're done, it's over. I'm thinking, cool, I can move on with my life.
I'll sleep a little better tonight.
A week later, I get my first appeal notice that he's trying to appeal the case.
Insane.
Yeah.
How can you even do that? How is that
right.
even a thing?
You have that right.
After you just were proven guilty.
You have to appeal it within, I think, 180 days.
It's fairly quickly, yeah.
It's pretty quick. Like, once you're convicted, you only get a very short period of time to appeal that or to file your appeal.
But it never worked.
So he went through 3 appeals. The last one was probably the most nerve-wracking for me. He was in person for that one, so he came back to the courthouse. I didn't have to appear to any of these. But I'm like, you're going to be there? I'm going to be there. I was 8 months pregnant. My husband was deployed. And it was just like a very hard time. And I remember sitting there and I had, my friend Herwig, who's a cop. I had Teresa, lost work. I had Kenny and some of my coworkers and stuff. And I'm just sitting there and they're like, can you bring the inmate in? And I'm like looking down and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't look. And then I hear the chain and I'm just like, I just look up and I'm like, I'm looking at you. I want you to know that I'm here. And he was so pissed that I was there. And he kept like, my mom decided that the most appropriate place to sit in this entire courtroom was, so there's like me, Herwig, Kenny was right there on the other side of Kenny. And BJ was around still. And then she's like, you're choosing to sit there? Like called her out on it. And he kept turning around during the appeal. He kept like looking back in my direction. And BJ was like, look forward. And he's like, I'm just trying to look at my wife. And she's like, no, look forward. Because she knew who he was looking at. He was trying to stare me down. And he just has that way of like being intimidating to me. And he can't stand it that I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, I'm not allowing this. Like, am I intimidated? Yeah, but you're not going to know it.
So he's supposed to be in until he's 70.
So, no, he's supposed to be in until he is 93. But at 70, I found out that he can apply to get out for elderly age. So he'll get granted like a hearing. And at that point, I will go to that and I will
Absolutely.
speak.
Yeah.
I will be at every single.
Elderly people can still reoffend.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he needs to stay in his entire life and pay for what he's done.
And as far as the sentencing goes, did you understand like concurrent and consecutively how it's served?
No.
Okay. Sorry.
But I didn't know. Like I said, I didn't want to interrupt the story, and
we want you to understand.
I didn't
too,
know if it
just
was like an important reason to stop it.
So, let's say you have multiple. Like in his case, he had how many counts? You say
19.
19 counts. So, he was guilty of 19 counts. Technically, he could have been sentenced by the judge to serve those consecutively, meaning back to back to back. So, if on count 1 he gets 10 years. Count 2, he gets 10 years. It just doubles you're just adding that time. You add that time on top of the next the charge before it, right? So, the count 1's 10 years, count 2's 10 years. That's 20 years, and it just goes all the way up.
You got 19 of them.
19 of them, right? But if it's consecutively, they can say, well, you're gonna get 10 years for count 1, but counts 2 and 3 you're gonna serve concurrent, meaning you're getting, let's say, 10 years for count 2 and 3. But you're only going to serve 10 years for both of those. They're concurrent. They run together. Does that make sense?
I don't get the difference between them. Like, what's like?
They're basically just lumping it all into one.
They're lumping it all into one. Even though they're separate charges, they're getting served as one.
So the highest amount of charges for the things that he faced for my sister, the highest number that he could serve was 20 years for her. And the highest he could serve for me was 20 years.
For each count.
For each count, yes. So the judge decided, I want to make sure he stays in, and I don't want to give another reason for him to be able to get out. So this is the highest I can sentence him, so I'm going to do that, but I'm going to make all of them within that one lump of 20 years. But I'm going to serve them back to back.
So whenever the judge decides to make it concurrent, that means he can't get out after 20. Is that what it probably like what it means basically?
So he has to serve.
Like, to me, it's just like, if you got to serve it, like,
Yeah.
I feel like you should just have to serve it all the time, but I guess people get to choose when they serve it?
No. Essentially, the first 20 years is the charges against my sister. He's serving that time for there.
Yeah.
Once he hits that 20, he's then serving the time for me.
Yeah. Well, what's the other option?
The other option would be to do 302 outright. I'm sentencing to 302 years in prison. But then whenever he applies for an appeal, they can say, that's a life sentence, and that's kind of harsh for a 53-year-old man.
Yeah.
Right. It is.
So
Yeah.
we want to relook at that.
Okay.
Versus the appeal, like versus doing it the way they did, where they ran some of them concurrent, it's like, okay, well, this is the number of counts that he was found guilty of, but he's only serving this. Mm-hmm. Doesn't 302 years sounds way worse than 40 years.
Yeah, and 40 isn't considered a life sentence.
Right.
Yeah, and then this is just me making stuff up off the top of my head. I feel like even if this dude would get out at 70 or 93, I feel like there should be some type of like limit of how close he can even get in contact with you guys.
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
I'm saying, like,
I think there's probably already is as part of his conviction. Most of the time they do that as part of their conviction. They still, for their entire lifetime, they can't have contact with the victim.
I'm talking like a minimum of at least one state.
Yeah, they don't do anything. I don't think they do anything like that.
Like, you have to, like, I mean, I'm like you liked Arkansas so much, you got to go down there, like, live down there. Because, like, what's stopping someone from from just coming back into your life if they're that close? If they're down in Florida and you're just getting out of jail at 70, it's going to make life a little hard, or in Texas or, like, somewhere far away, or put them in Alaska or something. It's not going to be easy just if they can get a car.
Put them all on one island.
Yep.
Keep track of them.
I don't want to get in this dark. I've talked on this situation before, and yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have the support that I do. So if you ever were to get out, I work with a lot of law enforcement, and I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. I have a lot.
What about your sister?
We got you, Bo.
I have a lot of friends that are military and
What
stuff.
about your sister, though?
She's kind of adopted into it. Like, if I truly needed it any
Well,
of
what about
my-
the other people too?
That's the problem.
You know, like
the
that's the
problem.
kind of stuff I think about.
I,
Not just
I
you
am
guys,
fortunate
but-
to have the support system that I do, but a lot of other people do not have that.
Yeah, how many of them just wanted to put it in their past and never and let before we end your story here, I want to thank you for sharing it,
Absolutely.
but I'm also glad to hear that he's in jail for a very long time, and I hope he don't get out at 70. I hope he gets few extra. I mean, if anything, I hope he dies at 70. You know, I hope he doesn't. Actually, it would be unfortunate if he died before 93,
Yeah, and
because then he wouldn't have to serve his years.
the really upsetting part about going through this journey and this life is I still feel bad for him. I struggled.
You've shown it.
I had a lot of counseling in the immediate year after this,
Sure.
Because I struggled putting him in there. I struggled with knowing the content of life he was going to have. And, and a lot of people are like, oh, I hope he gets, ass raped in prison. And I'm like, that doesn't comfort me.
It does nothing for you.
It makes me feel sick to think about sometimes. Like, if I were to find out that something happened to him, like he got, shanked or beat up or whatever, I would be like, you probably messed with the wrong person. But if I were to find out he was sexually assaulted, it would make me, I have a physical reaction to it because I wouldn't wish that upon anybody, him included. It's just, and so it's.
Even though he would, my opinion, he would deserve it.
Yeah, I just can't.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Because you've been through it, like you don't want anybody else to experience it, even if they were the perpetrator.
And in all reality, it doesn't benefit you, right?
No, it don't.
Like he's in jail, he's serving his time, he's not bothering, he's out of you guys' life. Outside, like that's what benefits you, but outside of that, like nothing else is benefiting you. And that's what, like, the fact that like anything is even still remotely there is unfair, right? The fact that like he gets to hold space in your mind or even in your memories is unfair.
Yeah. Just recently, actually, within the past 2 years, my husband had to drive me up to the prison. He's in Jefferson City Correctional. And I had to physically lay eyes on the prison because I had to know, like, I had to physically see the tangible place for me to understand, like, he's actually there. Mm-hmm. He's not just at home chilling.
Right.
It's just a surreal, like.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I have a couple questions.
Yeah, ask him.
Okay, for one, if he did get out at 70, or if he ever tried to call, what would that conversation look like?
There wouldn't be one.
It wouldn't be one.
Mm-mm. If anything, if it was a persistent thing, my husband would have the phone, and then I would be filing paperwork and getting orders of protection.
Okay, cool. Second question, and you can tell me if this is like too personal. Did it cause problems in a relationship with like your husband? Does it cause problems there, like sexually and just like emotionally getting attached with someone or getting close with someone?
Yeah.
Right? Like when you guys first start dating, like does that cause problems there? Like is it hard to get attached with someone there? Is it hard to tell them like about what's happened in your past? And then whenever it comes to actually being sexual with someone that you're in love with, is that hard to, like, does that create problems?
Great question. So Matt and I have actually known each other since we were 18. So we were really good friends. And he knew about my history because I've been relatively very open about it since it all came out. So he knew about my history before we even started dating. And he is a saint because he does put up with a lot of stuff. I have a lot of very bizarre and odd triggers. And he's very good at understanding, like, this is a trigger. I'm activating a trigger. Like a deadbolt locking is a trigger because my stepdad would make me lock a deadbolt. There's phrases like my stepdad would say, like, I'm making love to you. That can't be used in my life any longer because I immediately am like repulsed, physically repulsed by it. Physical acts, like he is very good about, like, if he tries to do something, hug me, whatever, and I'm like, no, I can't right now. He's good about understanding that. So it does cause problems because sometimes I do get stuck in my own head. Sometimes I disassociate for a very long time. I withdraw, I'm mean, and I'm just a lot to handle because certain times a year are bigger triggers for me than others. But he has stuck it out for 10 years. So he's gotten really good at knowing all the ins and outs of
Sounds
everything.
like very good, dude.
Well, think about that too from your spouse's point of perspective. You know, like if he's a physical touch person,
He is.
you
Yep.
know, so if that's what he needs to feel that satisfaction in a relationship where he wants to show his love to you by physical touch, because that's the type of person he is, he can't do that.
No.
He's not allowed to do that because he knows that's harmful to you or that triggers you. So he's got to find a new way.
Yep. And it's very, I feel really bad for him actually, because he is very much so a physical touch person and I'm acts of valor. And so sometimes I have to remind myself, like, you have to, like, just let him hug you or let him hold your hand or let him do whatever for.
So you have to like
little
mentally
bit.
think about that.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say
Yeah,
it's a bit of
I
a
need to allow him to do this so that he knows that I'm still here. You know, like I'm,
Yeah.
you know, physically and emotionally here with him.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Is that something that obviously is a mental thing, like Lynn was saying, but is that something that with time it gets easier and better? Like you're battling it in your head, but are you battling? Like, is it like a fight in your head where you're like, this is something that I have problems with, and it's part of my past, and it is not who I am today. So you push it away. That way, like in your relationship, maybe it can make things better. I'm not saying that you have a bad relationship. I'm just saying, like, is it something that, like, that you battle yourself? Is it something that you work on to try to improve on? Like, is there something there?
So I still go to counseling for maintenance at this point, and it's still a topic that I discuss with her. I'm very vocal with my husband about, like, we're very communicative when it comes to that. And so I still battle it, and I just try to, like, put myself in check.
But has it gotten better?
It has. I feel like you'd have to ask him for sure. The problem too, not to like place blame on anything, he went through a deployment also while I was going through postpartum. So during that very, like, I gave birth and had a kid while he was deployed, that was a year of no physical contact at all. I didn't give him hugs. I didn't anything. And so it's already hard to reintegrate into that lifestyle whenever he comes home. And then you add in the trauma on top of it, and you not being a physical touch person, it was a rough
I'm sure.
year.
'Cause I'm sure all he wanted to do when he got home
Yeah.
was hug you, you know,
And I
have that
was
physical
like-
touch. And you're just like, get off me. Don't touch me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. I didn't have it for so long that I was, like, perfectly okay with it.
Yeah.
And so
See how that goes. Like, hey, honey, I'm going to sit over here. You sit over there
yeah.
type deal.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, it was just the not needing a physical touch. Like, it wasn't something that, like, you craved.
Correct.
But you still had love for him. You still
Absolutely.
cared for him. You still loved his presence. Everything like that. Sure. So, like, how do you learn to cope? How do you learn to cope, and how do you learn to overcome? How, like, are those things that you still, obviously you're still working on now,
Yeah.
but, like, for anyone else that's listening that's maybe getting ready to go through it, or, like, they're going through it, but they're trying to get to that
The healing point.
the healing
Yeah.
point where they become this warrior. Like, what's some things you got for them?
Counseling for sure.
And now, is that like seeing a therapist, or is like counseling different than a therapist?
No, counseling's
No.
a therapist. Just a talk therapist or a counselor. EMDR, there's different types of therapy that you can go through.
Sure.
But just look for a trauma-focused therapist or counselor because they're going to be ones that are equipped to deal with that.
Is there ones that, like, because I know therapy's not cheap, so a lot of people are probably going to look at therapy and be like, I just can't afford it, so they just push it down. Is there, like, do you know, like, alternative routes? Like, have you found, like, I know, like, I did therapy for a while, just, like, for some stuff like depression and stuff, and, like, just confusion I was going through in my life. And I was lived in an area that I don't have therapists around here. I would have to drive like 45 minutes to an hour to find the closest one. And you got to hope that they are the ones because they don't all match up with you. So I remember I went to a thing called BetterHelp. And it was like $80. Then you get like so many free things. And then like, I think it's like maybe $80 per meeting or $40 a meeting. I don't really remember exactly because it's been a while since I did it. But I do remember I enjoyed it because it was all online.
Yep.
So I didn't actually have to go and try to meet someone. And you get to choose man or woman. Like in our area, I might only have the option of going to a man, or I might only have an option of going to a woman because that's all that's available around me. But with the internet now, I could choose. And then if I didn't like it, I could get another one instantly. I didn't have to tell them. I didn't have to disconnect. It was just literally get off the line one day, say I don't like that person, and I want to try someone else.
Yeah, so there's some options. Like COVID definitely helped out with the therapy world because it's pushed a lot of them to do online. So a lot of options are online now to where you can do virtual.
Do you think that's as good though?
I actually prefer it.
Okay. It's a little more comfort.
Yeah.
You get to be in your own
You
comfort
can sit
zone.
in your own home where you're comfortable, and you still get to have good conversation and work through things that need to be worked through from somebody that isn't, is not around you all the time, or that's, in your shoes.
If you have been seen at a children's advocacy center, if your child's been seen at a children's advocacy center, they are able to get free counseling through the child advocacy center. So that's a great option. And if you were seen, like say a kid was seen at our union office and they moved to St. Louis, we have connections to get them with the one in St. Louis, the CAC up there for counseling.
Cool.
There's a lot of therapists that do like a sliding scale based off of income. Compass is one of them. There's a few others. If you're military One Source can hook you up with some counseling through them, through TRICARE. That TRICARE will cover it. If you are, what else was I thinking here? I lost my track of thought.
I know through like my employer,
the
they
EAP.
they offer employee assistant programs, is what they call them, EAPs.
That's what I was going to say.
Where a lot of the online therapy, like your webcam therapy and stuff like that, is free.
Oh, cool.
They offer that as a benefit.
So maybe
to the
just
employee.
like if you're working somewhere,
ask about it. Ask your employer if you have an employee assistance program.
and they might not know, you might have to get the health insurance plan's number, call them and ask them.
Like I know a big one that has been used in the past, at least for us, is WebMD Live or something like that. I think is what it's called. And there's a few others that employers are now starting to go through and use.
And if you're ever searching for a counselor, you can go to psychologytoday.com and literally you just plug in your zip code and it'll have options where you can pick the gender of your counselor, what insurance they take, what issue you want them to counsel you for, and it'll
match you
with a group of counselors.
Oh, cool. In your area.
Yep,
or
nearby.
online if you're on.
Yep.
Okay. That's really cool. Anything else that like you found maybe helps? I feel like doing something like jujitsu. I don't know.
So,
Well, I think that's more for like the safety thing, like knowing that if you're ever put in that situation again, it sounded silly. I know, but like
it's great.
It's like you almost got some self-defense. I feel
So
like.
kickboxing I've done, and I find that it's a huge emotional release for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I usually end up crying at the end of it, just because
That's a good cry though, right?
it is a good cry, but it's just like you're releasing so much pent up. Like,
Do you know about like have you looked into jujitsu before though?
not that. No,
It's
just
like literally just like learning how to like choke someone out without even like having to physically punch them. Like it teaches you just like weak
I have a
points.
device that's faster.
Well, okay, yeah. I'm just thinking like if you don't have like if you're in a position, right? It teaches you how to put people on arm bars and
Close quarter, like
Yeah.
where you don't
encounters,
expect something like that to happen, right? And it's a lot of it's like on the ground where they teach
a lot
you
of
like
open
how to
hand stuff,
roll and like puts like just pressure points and all kinds of things that I feel like honestly I feel like jujitsu is like one of those things that is probably one of the I don't know, am I wrong? One of the best self-defense
I would agree 100%.
techniques?
A lot of our stuff in the academy was jiu-jitsu style.
based.
One
Yeah,
of
I would say
the-
better than MMA, which is involved in, but it's better than
Like Hoist
karate.
Gracie,
and-
Hoist Gracie type of stuff, a lot of those.
yeah.
One of the Franklin County detectives does a Taekwondo class, and I'm actually gonna probably do that just for something. But
Yeah, I mean, any self-defense, certainly, but I just feel like jiu-jitsu is like very technical. It's very, very technical. I mean, you can learn to kill someone in a lot of different ways, and they teach you how to do it, but also how to control it too. Because you just learn how to control people.
Yep.
That's what it is. Like, you really learn a lot about people, just like the body and like ways you can make someone like just very vulnerable. So that's why I was just thinking about something like that, plus the physical attribute of it. Like you said, like when you're done, you're done. Because you can kind of take out a lot of, just through physical attributes like that. You're taking out all that extra energy. And what about like just going to the gym? Have you ever tried that?
Oh, here he goes. He's going to try to sell a gym membership.
Would you like
She
to
lives
buy
in Union, Ryan. Come on.
Would you like to buy a year gym membership? No, I'm just thinking, for me, it's nice to put my headphones on, and I get to clear out the rest of the world. Like, it's just me and my headphones, and I'm just thinking for an hour.
Yeah, the gym.
So I didn't know if maybe something like that would help.
The gym is helpful.
The buffet is helpful too. I'm just saying.
No, Lynn, we talked about that. That was
Golden
part of
Corral's
the problem.
calling my name. I'm just saying.
Also, I find making sure that you have the right people in your inner circle. When I was younger, going through this, like when it first initially came out, I didn't necessarily have the best people in my corner. And I was a very mad and bitter person at that time. And over the years, I've cultivated that circle to be very open, kind, and then also I've inserted a lot of boundaries in my life that I didn't have before. And so I'm able to protect myself that way. So I would definitely encourage somebody that's going through this to explore those boundaries. And if somebody is not helping you, you need to let them go.
What are some of those big boundaries for you? Like big things that you just physically avoid so that you're not dealing with anything?
I don't go to Londell very much.
That's good. Is that where most of your abuse
fair.
took place? Was Londell?
Yeah. I am not a big person on like hugs. I don't like when people like, I would hug Lindy or my other cop friends and stuff. I would hug them, but like, I'm not big on people just like walking up and hugging me.
I could see how.
I hate to say it, but like the first time I've ever got a hug from Bo, and I'm a hugger. First time I got a Bo hug was at Mason's funeral. It was great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad I could help.
I could see it. I could see that. I could see why you're not.
Whenever you are somebody that I learn that I trust, and Mason was one of them too. When you become like a part of that inner circle, I would literally do anything for you. And so like to lose somebody like that, it takes a huge toll on me. Like our director, Kathy, passed away in 2020, and I was down for, I don't remember the entire month of February. She died in February. I don't remember that entire month. And so like I get really, really close to people that are not family because these guys become my family. And so I've just been able to cultivate that. So it's a lot of who you're around and how they respect you. And if they don't respect those boundaries and they don't respect your history, don't have them around.
Yeah, when we were talking about boundaries, I was thinking, like, probably, I would say, like, probably the people that can't just sit and listen when you talk, and they're not taking in, like, what you're saying. Like, do you put boundaries on people like that that can't be understanding of your situation? Because I feel like when you're going through something like that, those kind of people could be very troublesome too.
Yeah, it's
like
the
when
people,
you're trying to reach out to somebody, or you're trying to talk to somebody, and they're not listening. That can almost be troublesome too.
It's them. It's the people that say it happened so long ago. Why can't you just deal with it? It's the people that are like, if I hear somebody say a kid is lying about something like that, I'm instantly like,
look out, she's coming out of her chair.
And in personal too. Like I've had people in my personal world say that they don't believe a kid due to some abuse that they've incurred, and I'm like, incurred. I'm having a moment here.
Occurred?
See?
I think it could go. I think it could go either way.
Either way, I don't know.
And so I'm immediately like, you're done. Like I'm not. No, I'll cast you out.
I'll be honest. I can get to a point in an investigation where I have those thoughts where I may not necessarily believe a kid 100%. Maybe believe that something happened, but I don't believe the version that they're giving. I still don't say anything because I know like Bo will come across the table and smack me.
Well, it's also about like at what point in the investigation are you having those
that's true,
thoughts?
yeah.
And then why?
Exactly. There has to be other reasons. There has to be other evidence to support that child isn't being truthful.
Because it does happen. I've had kids.
Face value, like if the kid says this happened to me and that's where I'm at, I'm not going to say, well, I don't believe that, because it just doesn't sound like it's true.
Yeah.
No.
There's been kids that we've seen where I'm like
you get a vibe, or you just kind of, there's just certain things that you piece together. You're like,
But I still give them the benefit of the doubt.
You always give the child the benefit of the doubt. You believe the child until you have reason not to believe the child.
Right.
Every time.
And so it's just a lot of how people are about like that. Like if I tell them about what I go through, or they hear about something and they're like, I just don't want to deal with this. Okay, don't. I will never ask you to be in my life.
So that's like one big thing. Setting boundaries was one big thing that you found really help you.
Also gaslighting. People that gaslight,
cope with it.
They do a lot of damage to people like me. Because I do have those issues. If I think somebody, like if Lynn was mad at me, like truly mad at me and not just like going back and forth, like bickering with me, I would cry. Like I would vomit and I would be crying, because being in trouble and somebody being mad at me, it creates that very physical, visceral response to where even though my logical brain knows you're not going to have to do any of those things, like that feeling is so deep embedded in me that when those people give me those types of feelings, I'm like, I can't, on purpose, but it's a lot of who you have around you and how you feed off of them.
Sure, and I could see why that's a big reason why you'd have to have some boundaries.
Mm-hmm. I think a big thing too is for those people you do surround yourself with is making sure that they're educated the best that they can be and understanding, number one, what you went through, but number two, how to help you cope. How to be supportive in your coping process. Because 9 times out of 10, they're probably not going to have any clue on how to help you or how to be supportive for you. So, maybe it's good for them to go to therapy to understand that process for you.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, too, that have very significant trauma. One of my really good friends, so I'm Christian. One of my very good friends is a Wiccan, and she has a lot of trauma. And when I'm having the day, I'll just sit with her, and it's with her in that type of relationship, we have a very dark sense of humor, and we just make jokes. And I joke a lot about my history, and I'll do it at work with these guys, but I can't do that with everybody. So I have to know my audience too.
But so I had 2 gentlemen on that had lost their moms at a very young age, and I ended up unfortunately losing the second half of the podcast where they talked about it. But they both lost their moms at a very young age, and they said that one thing that they used for a coping mechanism was humor. Mm-hmm. And so I could see that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think like that's actually like probably something that's very healthy to do, right? Just to make yourself laugh, just to raise some endorphins and put yourself in a better mood.
For law enforcement, I can tell you that, a lot of police officers, because we see the things we see, our way of trying to not necessarily normalize it, but wrap our minds around it, and so that we try to put up that barrier so that we're not deeply affected by it, is humor through humor, so we try not to make it obvious to the general public, that, because we're laughing, we may be on a scene and we're joking or laughing about something, and it could be something very serious. It's not a good perspective for the outside public, because they might not understand what we're joking about, number one, and number two, that's maybe our way of trying to process that or try to not necessarily take it home and really be affected by it long term, because we see so much. Mm-hmm. So humor is a big helper for us.
I feel like doctors do it a lot too.
Yeah.
Especially like ones that deal with like cancers and like when you're going in for something that's very serious, that could be life affecting. Like I remember when I got my 4-wheeler accident, and like I had to get my face peeled down, and like it was this big thing. I was 18 years old, and I was like, I thought I literally didn't know what was going to happen.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, I do too all the time. And I just remember they made jokes like because I remember I went in, I was scared because I looked fine. Like my face had all swollen up, my nose was shattered, my sinus was shattered, but it was just like my face swelled up. It took a month for it to go down, and then when I went in, I looked fine. Like my nose looked fine. It was shattered, but it was all straight. My sinus looked fine as well. And I was like, man, do I even need surgery? Like, is this even like a must do thing? And I was like, I remember I asked the doctor, I was like, what happens if I don't get this surgery? And he's like, well, I go home and have a Long Island iced tea and smoke a cigar and watch my TV show and have a good night. And then he's like, but on a serious note, eventually your nose will just fall apart and just fall into your face. And then like your sinus will basically do the same thing. He's like, they said it was like a jigsaw puzzle, just a million different pieces in there. And they had to peel my face and glue it all back together and hold it in place and put my skin back, you know? And
It's crazy.
And I remember I think you could just tell that I was like very nervous, and that was like his way of lightening the mood. And I do remember it lightened the mood a lot for me.
Oh, yeah.
So I could see that. I certainly could see how humor helps in those situations.
Always.
Do you like, have you made friends with people that have a lot of trauma? Like, has that helped you as well? Like, have you just naturally pulled them people closer to you? Mm-hmm. Like, that's just something you've done?
I'm sure it's easier to connect, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but is that the only people you have around you?
No.
Like, you still have other people around you, too.
I have other people around me that have just, like, these picket fence lives growing up, you know? And it's always
I think they do.
That's how they explain
Portray
their
it,
lives
right?
to me,
Yeah.
you know? But
Yeah, how it's perceived.
And I always, like, people laugh at me because I'll see, like, these people that have family dinners. And I'm like, what is that like to have that type of family, you know, for you all to get together? And because I have no family on my side other than my sister and my grandma. Mm-hmm. And so, like, they'll get together and they have these big, huge parties and family dinners. And I'm like, what is that? That's sorcery to me.
Isn't your husband's family like that?
I get together with his mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you'll do it with your kids, too, right?
Oh,
Your husband?
yeah.
That's something you want to do?
Yeah.
Is that like a big...
That's a big thing for me and my family is because I didn't have a lot of that growing up, but I always knew that was something important to me, was being able to sit down and have that normalcy of how's everyone's day going, you know, how was your day, and having a meal together.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's all about Christmas. Christmas was a very safe time of year for me because we were going to grandma's house and the other grandma's house, and I was around family, and I was always around people. Mm-hmm. So I was safe.
Safe, right.
Summer,
obviously nothing's going to happen in front of a group of people.
Mm-hmm. Summer's harder because when I was younger, I stayed at home all day and watched my little sister. And so if my dad didn't go to work, I was a sitting duck, you know. So summers are always
crazy.
rough.
Still crazy. Even though you explained the whole story to me, it's still just so mind-blowing.
That's why I'm glad I get to do what I do at the CAC, because I'm able to take these kids that are going through this currently, and I'm able to be that voice that I didn't get to have. Because Lindy will tell you, like, I'll threaten to square up with him, and he's, you know, twice my size if he makes me mad. And so
That's true.
I'm the one that gets to sit there and be like, why isn't this case moving forward? You know, what are we waiting on here? Why are you doing that approach? Like, I'm the one that does all that, and I do all that because my sole concern is not their investigation. It's not the prosecution. It's not getting all the information out of the interview. It's about making sure that that kid is being heard and everything is being done to fit what they need.
Now, did you pursue that position, or did somebody come to you?
So I actually did. So while the court case was going through, I couldn't work there because it was an active case within the CAC because my sister's file. So I volunteered there for years prior to working there. And then once the case concluded, Kathy, who was my sister's advocate, was the director at the time. And she was like, hey, we have an advocate spot opening up. I really want you to do it. And I'm like, I want to do it. Like, I was waiting for it. So
Cool.
I got pulled on from her. And I've been there almost 6 years now.
That's awesome.
In that capacity.
That's awesome. I'm sorry that I hate to hear what had happened to you, but it's awesome to hear that there's somebody that's in the field that has passion about actually help. Like, they actually want to help these kids.
I always thought
That's very important.
growing up, because there was a lot of nights I would just leave there and I'm like, why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would always think, you know, God is doing this because there's something for you to do, and there's a reason why you're going through this. And I feel like he allowed this to happen because he knew that I was going to be needed in this capacity for right now. And I don't think that this is the end of my rope, and this isn't where I'm going to stay forever, but I plan to do more for kids in this world of abuse. And that's why I think that he allowed it was to give me that strength to do it.
Well, I'm glad you view it that way. You know, I'm glad that like you definitely took the positive spin on it. I think you're making an impact in this world.
Definitely.
And I do think we need to wrap the podcast up. We're probably 2.5 hours in. Ish.
It's my bedtime.
So you'll be all right, Lynn. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
I loved your story. I think it's great. I think there's some other people that are really going to get something out of it. Like I said earlier in the podcast, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Bo. Probably Lynn.
I hope where I can.
Yeah. Any of us are certainly like willing to help, or at least we could probably send you in the right direction. Yes. Like if that's the very least that I could do for someone, I certainly will. But thank you.
And I think, you know, if nobody took anything away from this, one thing that I will leave you with is that if you are going through something, it doesn't necessarily you don't have to be a child. You don't have to be dealing with sexual abuse or physical abuse or whatever the case is. If you're dealing with something, talk to somebody. Find somebody you are comfortable with and sit down and talk. Even if you don't feel like you want to talk. I get that. There's people that just don't want to talk about what they're dealing with. But I'm telling you, it will help.
Yeah. And now with the internet, there's so many ways to reach out.
Yep.
So many ways to reach out. Just find a way. It doesn't hurt. I even talked about it on the podcast that you and Scotty came on. Like, I felt hesitant about calling like 911 sometimes. Like, I wasn't sure if it was an emergency, and you're like, no, just call. Just call. It doesn't hurt. And then I was like, yeah, it's just all in my head. I just call now. So, Lynn, thank you for putting this together. Bo, thank you for reaching out to Lynn and getting a hold of me, because I really did enjoy this podcast. I think it's going to be probably one of my favorite podcasts. And I think some other people are really going to enjoy it as well. And you got anything else you want to share before we get off here?
No.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. If you guys are still listening, make sure you guys like, subscribe, share with your friends. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so help me out, you guys. Peace.